Some endings are compassion in disguise. They look like rejection at first. They feel like loss. They sound like silence. They arrive like a door closing in your face. But what if that door was not closing against you? What if it was closing for you? What if life was not taking something away to punish you, but removing what your attachment was too afraid to release? Why do some goodbyes hurt deeply and still lead you back to peace? Why do some people leave and suddenly you begin to hear your own soul again? Why does the ending you feared sometimes become the beginning your wisdom was waiting for? Buddhist wisdom teaches that nothing stays forever. Not people, not seasons, not pain, and not the version of you that begged to be chosen by what could not love you fully. Suffering begins when the heart clings to what has already finished, when the mind keeps replaying what cannot be changed, when the ego calls it abandonment, while life is quietly redirecting you toward freedom. And tonight, as you listen, something inside you may begin to loosen. The grief may still be there, but it may stop controlling you. The memories may still visit, but they may stop ruling your peace. The ending may still ache, but it may no longer feel like proof that you were broken. This is not just a lesson about losing someone or walking away. This is a lesson about seeing mercy where you once saw pain, about understanding that some endings do not destroy your life. They return you to it. Are you ready? Let's begin. The first lesson begins at the place where the heart usually fights the hardest. An ending may feel like life has turned against you, but sometimes the closed door is the first sign that something deeper is trying to protect you. What hurts today may be guarding you from a tomorrow where you would have lost more of yourself than you realized. When a door closes, it may be protecting you from a life your wisdom had not yet outgrown. There are moments when life does not explain itself. It simply closes the door. The person changes. The message stops coming. The opportunity disappears. The place that once felt safe begins to feel heavy. The dream you held tightly starts falling apart in your hands. And because the heart does not always recognize protection when it arrives through pain, you may call it rejection. You may call it failure. You may call it punishment. You may sit there asking, why did this happen to me? But what if the deeper question is, what was this saving me from? A closed door can feel cruel when you are still standing in front of it with hope in your hands. You knock again, not always because peace is behind it, but because familiarity is. You want what you knew. You want the old feeling. You want the version of life you had already planned in your mind. Even if that life was draining you, even if it was making you smaller, even if it was asking you to silence your own truth just to keep it alive, the heart still reaches for what it recognizes. This is why endings can hurt even when they are necessary. You are not only losing something outside of you, you are losing the story you told yourself about who you would become if it stayed. Buddhist wisdom teaches that suffering is not only caused by loss. Much of suffering is caused by clinging. It is not just the door closing that breaks the heart. It is the mind standing there, refusing to accept that the door is closed. It is the repeated thought that says, this should not have happened. It is the hidden belief that says, I cannot be okay unless this comes back. It is the inner battle between reality and desire. And the longer desire argues with reality, the deeper the wound becomes. But sometimes life closes a door because it sees what your attachment cannot see yet. It sees the cost of staying. It sees the way you were bending yourself to fit into a space that no longer honored your growth. It sees the way you kept explaining your pain to people who had no intention of understanding it. It sees how tired your spirit had become from trying to turn confusion into love, distance into hope, and crumbs into proof that you mattered. And because you were not ready to walk away, life allowed the door to close. At first, this can feel unbearable. The ego does not like closed doors. The ego wants control. It wants to be chosen. It wants the final word. It wants to believe that if it tries harder, speaks better, loves deeper, waits longer, or suffers more quietly, the door will open again. But the soul is not always asking for the door to open. Sometimes the soul is asking for freedom. Sometimes the soul is tired of surviving inside a place the ego keeps calling home. This is where the lesson becomes difficult. A closed door may be protecting you from the life your wounded self still wanted. Not every desire comes from wisdom. Some desires come from fear. The fear of being alone, the fear of starting again, the fear of being forgotten, the fear that if one person leaves, no one else will ever stay. When desire comes from fear, it can choose what keeps you trapped. It can make you chase what confuses you. It can make you call anxiety passion. It can make you call dependency devotion. It can make you call waiting loyalty, even when waiting is slowly eating your peace. So when a door closes, it may not be denying your happiness. It may be denying your wound the chance to keep choosing your future. That is a strange kind of mercy, but it is mercy still. It is the kind of compassion that does not ask your attachment for permission. It simply interrupts the pattern before the pattern becomes your life. Think about how many people look back years later and thank life for what they once cried over. At the time, they could not see it. They thought the breakup was the end of their joy. They thought the lost job was the end of their purpose. They thought the friend who walked away had taken their sense of belonging with them. They thought the failed plan meant they had fallen behind in life. But later, with a calmer mind and a clearer heart, they saw the hidden truth. That ending did not destroy them. It redirected them. It pushed them out of a room where they were becoming less alive. This does not mean the pain was not real. Pain is real. Grief is real. Missing someone is real. The shock of sudden change is real. Buddhist wisdom does not ask you to pretend you are not hurting. It does not ask you to smile while your heart is shaking. It asks you to see clearly, even while you are hurting. It asks you to hold your pain without turning it into a prison. It asks you to say, "This hurts, but it may not be the whole story." A closed door may be protecting you from staying loyal to potential instead of reality. This is one of the deepest traps of attachment. Many people do not cling to what is truly present. They cling to what could be present. They hold on to the version of someone that appears for a moment and disappears when consistency is needed. They hold on to the apology, the promise, the soft memory, the beginning that felt beautiful, the rare moments that made them believe everything could become better. They say, "But it was not always bad." And that may be true. Few things are always bad. But something does not have to be bad every day to be wrong for your peace. The mind can turn small moments of goodness into reasons to ignore long seasons of pain. One kind message can make you forget weeks of silence. One warm memory can make you excuse repeated disrespect. One promise can make you stay through another cycle of disappointment. And this is why life sometimes closes the door fully. Because if the door remained slightly open, you might keep calling that small opening hope. You might keep waiting at the edge of your own life, asking for proof from someone or something that had already shown you the truth. Buddhist wisdom invites you to see things as they are, not as craving wants them to be. This is not bitterness. This is clarity. Clarity does not mean you hate what ended. It means you stop decorating it. You stop editing out the pain. You stop remembering only the beautiful parts while ignoring the parts that broke your peace. You stop turning your longing into evidence that something was meant to stay. Missing something does not always mean it was good for you. Sometimes it only means you were deeply attached. There is a difference between what feels familiar and what is aligned. Familiarity can pull you back into places that no longer nourish you. Alignment may feel strange at first because it asks you to become someone new. The old door may feel comfortable because you know the pain behind it. You know the role you played there. You know how to survive there. You know how much of yourself to hide, how much to accept, how much to pretend, how much to hope. But the new path asks for honesty. It asks you to stand without the old pattern. It asks you to meet yourself without the noise of chasing what left. That is why the end of a familiar pain can feel scarier than the pain itself. The pain had a routine. The pain gave you something to focus on. The pain gave your mind a problem to solve. But once the door closes, there is silence. And inside that silence, you begin to hear the questions you avoided. Who am I without this? What do I truly need? Why did I stay so long? What part of me believed this was all I deserved? These questions can feel heavy, but they are also the beginning of freedom. A closed door protects you by returning you to the present moment. Attachment lives in the past and the future. It replays what happened and imagines what could still happen. It keeps you trapped between memory and fantasy. You remember how things used to be, then you imagine how they might become again. But life is happening here, in this breath, in this body, in this exact moment. And when a door closes, reality is asking you to stop living in the story and return to what is true now. This is not easy because the mind loves unfinished stories. It wants explanations. It wants closure. It wants the perfect final conversation where everything makes sense. It wants the person to understand your pain. It wants the situation to prove that you were not foolish for caring. But not every door closes with a clear answer. Sometimes the answer is the closing itself. Sometimes silence is the answer. Sometimes repeated pain is the answer. Sometimes your exhaustion is the answer. Sometimes the absence of peace is the answer. You may not get every explanation you want, but you can still receive the lesson. Closure is not always something someone gives you. Sometimes closure is what happens when you stop abandoning yourself for an answer that may never come. It is what happens when you stop needing the person who hurt you to validate your pain before you believe it. It is what happens when you say, I may never understand everything, but I understand enough to stop returning to what harms my spirit. This is where wisdom begins to rise. Not loudly, not suddenly. It rises slowly, like light entering a room after a long night. At first, you may still grieve. You may still check the past. You may still feel the ache in certain songs, places, memories, or quiet hours. But something begins to change. The pain no longer controls every thought. The longing no longer feels like a command. The closed door no longer looks like proof that you were rejected. It begins to look like a boundary life created when you could not create one yourself. Some doors close because your soul can no longer shrink to fit them. This is important. There are places where you can only belong by becoming less honest, less alive, less peaceful, less yourself. There are relationships where love becomes a performance. There are spaces where you are accepted only when you are easy to control. There are dreams that require you to betray your body, your values, or your inner calm. You may not notice it at first because the desire to belong can be powerful. But slowly, your spirit starts to feel tired. You become careful with your words. You stop asking for what you need. You laugh when you want to cry. You say, "It is fine," when nothing inside you feels fine. A closed door may be life refusing to let you keep disappearing. It may be saying, "You were not born to become smaller for the sake of staying." This is why some endings bring grief and relief at the same time. You miss what was familiar, but you also breathe differently. You feel sadness, but you also feel space. You cry over what ended, but some quiet part of you knows you are safer now. Do not judge yourself for this mixture. The heart can love and still know it needs distance. The soul can grieve and still know it has been rescued. Buddhist non-attachment does not mean you stop caring. It does not mean you become cold or emotionless. It means you learn to love without chains. You learn to appreciate what comes without demanding that it stay forever. You learn to honor what was beautiful without denying what became painful. You learn to bow to impermanence, not because you wanted the ending, but because you understand that fighting reality only deepens suffering. Everything changes. The body changes, people change, feelings change, seasons change. The version of you who once wanted a certain life may not be the same version of you who is being called forward now. Impermanence is not here to frighten you. It is here to awaken you. It teaches you not to build your entire peace on things that can shift. It teaches you to love deeply, but not blindly. It teaches you to hold life with open hands, because what is truly aligned does not require you to destroy yourself to keep it. When the door closes, you may feel like you have lost access to someone or something, but often that loss of access restores access to yourself. You begin to remember your own rhythms. You begin to hear your own thoughts without another person's confusion filling the room. You begin to notice what you enjoy, what you need, what you value, what you no longer want to tolerate. You begin to sleep differently. You begin to breathe differently. You begin to see how much energy was being spent on keeping something alive that was not feeding you. There is a hidden cost to staying too long. It may not show all at once. It shows in your nervous system. It shows in your self-trust. It shows in your ability to laugh freely. It shows in the way you stop expecting kindness. It shows in the way you keep preparing for disappointment. It shows in the way peace starts to feel unfamiliar. Sometimes the door closes before the cost becomes permanent. Sometimes life removes you before you forget what freedom feels like. And yes, you may still mourn the future you imagined. This is often what hurts the most. You are not only grieving what happened, you are grieving what you hoped would happen, the trips you pictured, the conversations you expected, the version of them you believed would finally arrive, the version of yourself you thought you would become beside them. The mind mourns imaginary futures because they felt real inside you, but a future imagined is not the same as a future promised, and wisdom asks you to return from the dream to the truth. The truth may be painful, but it is also clean. It does not require constant guessing. It does not ask you to betray your own knowing. It does not force you to keep watering a dead branch and calling it patience. Truth may break an illusion, but it also gives you back your sight. And once you can see clearly, you can choose differently. Sometimes compassion removes what you were too afraid to release. Not because life is cruel, but because life is loyal to your awakening. You may have prayed for peace, but expected peace to arrive by changing the person, fixing the situation, or making the old path easier. Instead, peace arrived by closing the door. That can feel confusing. You asked for healing, and life gave you an ending. You asked for clarity, and life gave you silence. You asked for strength, and life placed you where you had to stand alone. But maybe the answer was not wrong. Maybe it was deeper than what you expected. The closed door may be the beginning of a more honest life, not an easier life at first, but a truer one. A life where you stop mistaking intensity for love. A life where you stop proving your worth to people who benefit from your doubt. A life where you no longer chase what makes you feel unsafe. A life where peace becomes more attractive than drama. A life where you finally understand that being chosen by the wrong thing can cost more than being released by it. This is how endings become teachers. They show you where you were attached. They show you where you ignored yourself. They show you where you placed your happiness in unstable hands. They show you what you were willing to sacrifice for belonging. They show you which parts of you still need compassion. They do not come only to take, they come to reveal, and what they reveal can become the foundation of your freedom. So when a door closes, do not rush to curse it. Do not rush to worship it either. Stand before it with honesty. Let yourself feel the pain. Let yourself admit what you wanted. Let yourself grieve the version of life you thought would unfold. But do not let grief convince you that nothing good remains. A closed door is not the end of the path. It is the end of one direction. And sometimes the direction you wanted was not the direction that would have led you home. One day you may look back and understand. You may see that if that door had stayed open, you would have continued abandoning yourself in small, quiet ways. You may see that what felt like rejection was really redirection. You may see that what felt like loss was space being made. You may see that what felt like silence was life teaching you to listen inward. You may see that what felt like disappointment was mercy wearing a hard face. Until that day comes, breathe. Do not force yourself to be grateful before you are ready. Do not pretend it does not hurt, but also do not build a home in the hurt. Let the ending be painful without making it your identity. Let the door be closed without making it your prison. Let the unknown be uncomfortable without running back to what already showed you its limits. Some endings are compassion in disguise because they protect the person you are becoming from the life your wounded self would have kept choosing. They protect your peace from your attachment. They protect your future from your fear. They protect your wisdom from your old hunger for approval, certainty, and control. And though the heart may not understand immediately, the soul often knows before the mind does. The door that closed may not be blocking your blessing. It may be guarding it. It may be standing between your old pattern and your new life. It may be keeping you from returning to a version of yourself that only knew how to survive. So bow to what has ended, bless what was real, release what was not, and when you are ready, turn around. Because life may have closed that door not to leave you empty, but to guide you toward the place where your peace can finally enter. Continuing from the closed door, the next truth goes even deeper. Sometimes life does not only close the door to protect you from the wrong path. Sometimes it removes what you kept defending because your attachment had become louder than your wisdom. What feels like a loss may be the universe gently taking away what your heart was too afraid to put down. Why some losses are not punishment, but the universe removing what your attachment kept defending. There are losses that feel like punishment because they touch the exact place where you were most afraid to be empty. They do not just take a person, a plan, a dream, or a familiar comfort. They take the thing you had secretly built your safety around. They take the thing you kept explaining, protecting, excusing, and holding, even when a quiet part of you already knew it was no longer giving you peace. And when it disappears, the first feeling is not always wisdom. The first feeling is shock. The heart says, "Why would life take this from me?" But the deeper truth may be, life did not take it to hurt you. Life removed it because your attachment had started defending what your soul had already outgrown. This is hard to accept because attachment does not feel like attachment when you are inside it. It feels like love. It feels like loyalty. It feels like hope. It feels like patience. It feels like faith. You tell yourself, "I am just not giving up." You tell yourself, "I am staying because I care." You tell yourself, "I am holding on because this still matters." And sometimes that may be true, but there comes a point where holding on stops being love and becomes fear, wearing the clothes of devotion. There comes a point where patience becomes self-abandonment. There comes a point where hope becomes a way of avoiding the truth. There comes a point where what you call faith is really the refusal to release what is already showing you its limit. Buddhist wisdom teaches that suffering grows when the mind clings to what is changing and demands that it remain the same. Nothing in life is fixed. People change, feelings change, circumstances change, seasons change. What once nourished you can become too small for you. What once felt safe can begin to feel like a cage. What once gave you joy can start demanding pieces of your peace. But attachment does not care about change. Attachment says, "This must stay because I need it to stay." It does not ask whether the thing is still healthy. It does not ask whether you are still growing. It does not ask whether your spirit is becoming lighter or heavier. Attachment only asks, "Can I keep it?" And that is why some losses arrive like painful mercy. They interrupt the grip, they break the loop, they remove the object of obsession so the soul can finally breathe. At first, the mind may panic because it has lost what it used to lean on, but sometimes what you leaned on was also what kept you weak. Sometimes what you defended was also what drained you. Sometimes what you prayed would stay was the very thing blocking the peace you kept asking for. The universe does not always answer your prayers by giving you what you want. Sometimes it answers by taking away what keeps you unable to receive what you truly need. You may have prayed for calm, but kept choosing a life full of emotional storms. You may have prayed for self-respect, but kept returning to places where you had to beg for basic kindness. You may have prayed for clarity, but kept defending confusion because the truth was too painful to face. You may have prayed for healing, but kept touching the wound and calling it love. So life removes the thing, not because you are being punished, but because you were too attached to release it on your own. This kind of loss can feel unfair because the heart remembers the good moments. It says, "But there was beauty there," and maybe there was. Not everything that leaves was evil. Not everything that ends was meaningless. Not every person who goes was a villain. Sometimes the pain is so confusing because there truly were moments of warmth, connection, laughter, hope, and tenderness. But Buddhist wisdom asks us to look at the whole truth, not only the pieces that comfort attachment. A few beautiful moments do not always make a whole path sacred. A little sunlight through a cracked roof does not mean you should live in a collapsing house. Attachment loves selective memory. It remembers the soft voice but forgets the long silence. It remembers the promise but forgets the pattern. It remembers the early sweetness but forgets the later exhaustion. It remembers how it felt to be wanted but forgets how often you felt unseen. And because the mind can replay the beautiful parts more easily than it can accept the painful truth, you may keep defending what hurt you. You may keep explaining it to your friends. You may keep making excuses in your own heart. You may keep saying, "They did not mean it. It was just a difficult season. Maybe tomorrow will be different." But how many tomorrows must become yesterday before the soul is allowed to admit it is tired? Some losses are not punishment because they remove the need for you to keep lying to yourself. That is one of the greatest gifts hidden inside pain. When something finally ends, the energy you spent defending it is released. You no longer have to keep proving that the situation was better than it was. You no longer have to turn small signs into big hopes. You no longer have to translate neglect into love. You no longer have to silence your own discomfort to protect the image of what you wanted it to be. The loss strips away the performance, and for the first time, you can stand before the truth without needing to decorate it. This is not easy. Truth can feel cold before it feels freeing. When the illusion falls away, you may feel exposed. You may have to admit, "I stayed too long." You may have to admit, "I knew something was wrong." You may have to admit, "I was more afraid of losing it than I was committed to honoring myself." But this admission is not meant to humiliate you. It is meant to awaken you. There is no shame in realizing you were attached. Every human heart attaches. Every human heart tries to hold on to what gives it comfort. The lesson is not to hate yourself for clinging. The lesson is to see the cost of clinging clearly enough that you no longer call it peace. The universe sometimes removes what your attachment kept defending, because attachment can turn pain into identity. You begin to believe that your struggle is who you are. you become the one who waits, the one who proves, the one who understands everyone else, the one who accepts less, the one who keeps trying, the one who can handle the emotional weight. And people may even praise you for this. They may call you strong, they may call you patient, they may call you loyal, but deep inside you may not feel strong. You may feel tired, you may feel unseen, you may feel quietly empty. Strength that requires you to keep betraying yourself is not strength. It is survival. There is a difference between enduring a difficult season and staying attached to a pattern that keeps repeating. A difficult season has movement, there is honesty, there is effort, there is responsibility, there is a shared desire to heal, but a pattern keeps circling. It gives you just enough hope to keep you from leaving, then returns you to the same pain. Attachment often protects the pattern by calling it a season. It says, "This will pass." But some things do not pass because they are not temporary storms. They are the climate of that connection, that place, that habit, or that life. When life removes it, you may feel like you lost something precious, but you may also begin to notice a strange quiet afterward. A painful quiet, yes, but also a cleaner one. The anxiety that used to live in your chest may begin to soften. The constant checking, waiting, hoping, and guessing may slowly lose its power. The part of you that was always preparing for disappointment may finally begin to rest. At first, you may not know what to do with that rest. Peace can feel unfamiliar when chaos has been your normal, but unfamiliar does not mean wrong. Sometimes, the calm after a loss is proof that your spirit had been carrying more than you admitted. Buddhist wisdom teaches that craving says, "I must have this to be okay." Wisdom says, "I can love, lose, grieve, and still return to myself." This is not a cold way to live. It is a free way to live. Non-attachment does not mean you never care. It means you do not make one person, one result, one dream, or one version of life the owner of your peace. It means you stop placing your whole sense of worth in something that can change without your permission. It means you learn to hold life with tenderness, but not with desperation. Some losses teach you exactly where you gave your power away. Before the loss, you may not have seen it. You thought you were loving. You thought you were being committed. You thought you were doing what a good person does. But after the loss, you may realize how much of your mood depended on someone else's behavior, how much of your confidence depended on being chosen, how much of your hope depended on one outcome, how much of your self-image depended on keeping a door open. That realization can hurt, but it is also the beginning of inner freedom. Because whatever can control your peace has become too powerful in your life. This does not mean you should never feel pain when something ends. Pain is natural. Grief is natural. Tears are not weakness. Missing someone is not failure. But there is a difference between feeling grief and becoming a servant to attachment. Grief says, "I loved this, and now I must learn to live with its absence." Attachment says, "I cannot live unless this returns." Grief moves slowly, but it moves. Attachment circles the same room and calls the circle devotion. Grief honors what was real. Attachment refuses to let reality be real. When the universe removes what attachment defended, it may also be protecting you from becoming bitter. This may sound strange because loss can make people bitter at first, but staying too long in the wrong place can harden the heart even more. When you remain where you are unseen, you may slowly begin to resent love itself. When you keep giving to people who do not value your giving, you may start believing kindness is foolish. When you keep waiting for someone to change, you may begin to distrust everyone. When you keep betraying yourself, you may become angry at the world for the pain you are helping maintain. A timely loss can protect the softness in you before disappointment turns it into stone. There are people who do not lose something until after it has already taken their joy, their confidence, their health, their time, and their hope. They stay because they fear the pain of leaving, not realizing that staying is already painful. They fear emptiness, not realizing they already feel alone. They fear starting again, not realizing they are already stuck in a life that does not feel alive. So when life removes what they would have continued defending, the pain is sharp, but it may prevent a deeper destruction. Sometimes the loss is smaller than the cost of keeping what was lost. This is why you must be careful when you interpret loss. The mind often rushes to label it. I failed. I was not enough. Life is against me. Nothing good stays. But these thoughts come from wounded interpretation, not always from truth. A loss may not mean you failed. It may mean something had completed its role. It may not mean you were not enough. It may mean the place you were trying to fit into could not hold the truth of who you are becoming. It may not mean life is against you. It may mean life is unwilling to let your attachment keep negotiating with your suffering. Buddhist wisdom invites you to ask a different question. Not only, why did this leave? But, what did I keep defending that this loss is now revealing? This question is not easy, but it is powerful. Maybe you defended someone's inconsistency because you feared being alone. Maybe you defended a dream because you did not want to admit it was no longer your dream. Maybe you defended a habit because it gave quick comfort, even while stealing long-term peace. Maybe you defended a role because being needed made you feel valuable. Maybe you defended a version of yourself that was already too small for your growth. Loss reveals these things because it removes the cover. Once the cover is removed, you can no longer pretend in the same way. This can feel painful, but it can also become the start of a more honest life. The truth may ask you to grieve. It may ask you to apologize to yourself. It may ask you to rebuild your routines. It may ask you to sit in silence without running toward the next distraction. It may ask you to feel the loneliness you used to avoid. But inside that loneliness, something sacred can happen. You may begin to discover that you are not as empty as you feared. You may begin to feel your own presence again. This is one of the hidden blessings of loss. It clears the space where self-return can happen. When your attachment was active, your mind may have been crowded with thoughts, worries, hopes, fears, plans, memories, and emotional negotiations. You were always managing something inside. But when the thing is gone, the noise slowly begins to settle. Not immediately, not perfectly, but slowly. And in that settling, you may hear the wisdom you kept ignoring. You may remember the dreams you postponed. You may return to simple joys that had been buried under emotional survival. You may begin to live from your center again. Some losses are not punishment because they restore your ability to choose consciously. Attachment makes choices from fear. Wisdom makes choices from clarity. When attachment leads, you choose what gives immediate relief. You text because silence feels unbearable. You return because loneliness feels too wide. You accept less because the thought of having nothing feels worse. You say yes because rejection feels dangerous. But when wisdom begins to lead, you choose what supports your peace, even if the choice is uncomfortable. You stop asking, what will make the ache go away right now? And begin asking, what will help my soul become free? This shift is not small. It is the difference between living as a prisoner of emotional hunger and living as a student of truth. Hunger grabs. Truth waits. Hunger begs. Truth breathes. Hunger says, give me anything so I do not feel this emptiness. Truth says, let me understand this emptiness so I stop filling it with what harms me. The universe may remove something so you can stop feeding hunger and start listening to truth. There is also a deep humility that loss brings. Before the loss, you may have believed you knew what had to happen for your life to be okay. You had a fixed picture. This person must stay. This plan must work. This outcome must happen. This door must open. But life is wider than your picture. Wisdom often grows when the picture breaks. When you lose what you thought you needed, you may discover needs beneath the need. You thought you needed that person, but you needed love that felt safe. You thought you needed that job, but you needed purpose and stability. You thought you needed that approval, but you needed self-trust. You thought you needed the old life, but you needed peace. Loss can guide you from the surface desire to the deeper longing. This is why it can become a teacher. It shows you that what you were clinging to may have been only a symbol. You did not just want the relationship. You wanted belonging. You did not just want the success. You wanted worth. You did not just want the apology. You wanted your pain to be seen. You did not just want the past back. You wanted to feel safe again. Once you understand the deeper longing, you can stop begging one closed door to provide everything your soul needs. The universe removes what attachment defends when that attachment begins to block the next stage of your becoming. Growth sometimes requires removal. A tree cannot keep every leaf forever. A body cannot heal while the poison remains. A mind cannot become peaceful while it keeps worshipping the cause of its unrest. A heart cannot receive healthy love while still kneeling before a pattern that confuses it. This does not mean what left had no purpose. It may have had a purpose, but purpose does not always mean permanence. Some things come to awaken you, not to accompany you forever. This is where many people suffer. They believe that if something was meaningful, it must stay. But meaning and permanence are not the same. A person can teach you deeply and still not be meant to walk the whole road with you. A season can shape you and still end. A dream can carry you for years and still dissolve when your life asks for a truer direction. A loss does not erase the meaning of what came before. It simply says, the form has changed. The lesson remains, the love may remain, the wisdom remains, but the attachment to keeping it exactly as it was must soften. Buddhist wisdom teaches us to bow to impermanence, not because endings are easy, but because resisting impermanence makes the heart suffer twice. First, you suffer the loss. Then you suffer your argument with the loss. You replay it, fight it, deny it, personalize it, and build stories around it. You keep touching the wound to check if it still hurts. You keep asking why the river moved, when the nature of a river is movement. Peace begins when you stop demanding permanence from what was always changing. This does not happen in one day. You may understand it with your mind before your heart accepts it. You may know the loss was necessary and still cry over it. You may feel protected and still feel sad. You may feel relieved and still miss what is gone. Healing is not a straight road. It is a soft returning, again and again, from fantasy to truth, from resistance to breath, from self-blame to compassion, from attachment to inner steadiness. Be patient with the part of you that still wants to defend what left. That part is not stupid. It is scared. It is trying to protect you from the unknown. It is trying to hold on to something familiar, because unfamiliar freedom can feel like danger at first. Speak to that part gently. Say, I know you wanted this to stay. I know you are afraid. I know this hurts. But we cannot keep calling suffering safety. We cannot keep losing ourselves to keep an illusion alive. This inner kindness matters. You do not heal attachment by attacking yourself. You heal it by bringing awareness to the places where fear has been making your choices. As awareness grows, the loss begins to change shape. It may still be painful, but it no longer looks only like punishment. You begin to see the ways it protected you. You begin to see what it exposed. You begin to see how much energy has returned to you. You begin to see the people who remained, the strength that rose, the clarity that came, the self-respect that started rebuilding itself. You begin to see that life did not take everything. It took one thing that had become too powerful so you could finally remember the whole life still waiting for you. And when gratitude finally comes, it will not be forced. It will not be the kind of gratitude that denies pain. It will be quiet and honest. It may sound like, "I did not want that ending, but I understand why it had to happen." It may sound like, "I loved what was there, but I also see what it was costing me." It may sound like, "I thought I was being abandoned, but I was being returned to myself." That kind of gratitude is not pretending. It is wisdom after grief has done its work. So if something has been removed from your life, do not rush to decide that you were punished. Pause. Breathe. Look deeper. Ask what your attachment was protecting. Ask what truth you were avoiding. Ask what part of you had become dependent on what could not give you lasting peace. Ask what space has now opened. Ask what version of you is trying to be born through this loss. Some losses are not punishment. They are interruption. They are protection. They are redirection. They are the universe taking from your hands what fear would not let you release. They are life saying, "You have defended this long enough. You have suffered for this long enough. You have mistaken this for home long enough." And though your heart may ache, that ache may be the sound of an old chain breaking. What leaves may leave you trembling, but it may also leave you clearer. What ends may make you cry, but it may also make you honest. What disappears may create silence, but inside that silence, your soul may finally speak. And one day, when you are no longer blinded by the first pain of loss, you may see that the universe was not closing its hand against you. It was opening yours. Continuing from the truth that some losses are not punishment, but life removing what attachment kept defending, we now come to a deeper question. When something ends, what exactly are you grieving? Are you grieving love, or are you grieving the thing you depended on to feel safe, chosen, important, and complete? This is where endings become painful teachers. They do not only show you who left, they show you what you were holding on to inside yourself. How endings expose the difference between love and dependency. There are endings that do more than break the heart. They reveal the heart. They pull away the person, the routine, the comfort, the familiar voice, the old promise, and suddenly you are left staring at something deeper than loss. You are left staring at the truth of what that connection had become inside you. Was it love, or was it fear of being alone? Was it devotion, or was it the hunger to be chosen? Was it care, or was it the quiet belief that without this person, without this bond, without this version of life, you would not know who you are? This is why some endings feel so unbearable. It is not only because someone is gone, it is because something they carried for you is gone with them. Maybe they carried your sense of worth. Maybe they carried your hope for the future. Maybe they carried the feeling that your life had direction. Maybe they carried the proof that you mattered. And when they left, it felt like they took all of that away. But Buddhist wisdom would ask gently, why was so much of your peace placed in hands that were never meant to hold your whole being? Love and dependency can look very similar from the outside. Both can make you care deeply. Both can make you miss someone. Both can make you feel pain when separation happens. Both can make you remember, cry, and long for what was. But inside, they are not the same. Love has space in it. Dependency has panic in it. Love can grieve and still breathe. Dependency feels like it cannot survive without what it lost. Love wants the good of the other, even when the form changes. Dependency wants the other to stay because their absence feels like danger. Love says, "You mattered to me." Dependency says, "Without you, I do not know how to matter to myself." This difference often remains hidden while the relationship is active. As long as the person is present, as long as the routine continues, as long as the door remains open, you may not notice how much of your inner world depends on it. You may think you are simply loving. You may think your worry is proof of care. You may think your constant waiting is proof of loyalty. You may think your fear of losing them is proof of deep connection. But when the ending comes, the truth rises, not to shame you, but to wake you. It shows whether the bond was nourishing your life or quietly replacing your own center. Real love does not ask you to disappear. It does not demand that you abandon your peace in order to keep someone close. It does not require you to live in constant fear, guessing, proving, begging, or shrinking. Love may involve sacrifice, but it does not turn self-erasure into a virtue. Love may require patience, but it does not ask you to tolerate endless confusion and call it growth. Love may hurt when it ends, but it does not destroy your ability to return to yourself. If something makes you feel like you cannot exist without it, then what you are experiencing may not only be love, it may be dependency wearing love's face. Dependency often begins quietly. It does not announce itself as a chain. It begins as comfort. Someone makes you feel seen during a time when you felt invisible. Someone gives you attention when your soul was starving for warmth. Someone becomes your routine when your life feels uncertain. Someone becomes your emotional home before you have built a home within yourself. At first, it feels beautiful. It feels like relief. It feels like finally resting. But slowly, if awareness is missing, the heart can start leaning too heavily. What began as connection becomes emotional survival. What began as love becomes need. What began as closeness becomes fear. Then the mind starts making bargains. As long as they stay, I will be okay. As long as they text, I can breathe. As long as they choose me, I feel valuable. As long as they approve of me, I can trust myself. This is where suffering grows, because now your peace is no longer rooted within you. It is tied to another person's mood, presence, choices, and consistency. When they are warm, you feel alive. When they are distant, you collapse. When they give attention, you feel worthy. When they withdraw, you feel abandoned. That is not freedom. That is emotional captivity. Buddhist wisdom teaches that anything you cling to as your source of identity will eventually become a source of suffering. This does not mean you should not love people. It means you should not turn people into the ground beneath your feet. People are human. They change, struggle, disappoint, leave, grow, misunderstand, and sometimes fail to meet you with the care you hoped for. If your whole peace depends on them being exactly who you need them to be, your peace will always be fragile. Love becomes wiser when it is rooted in presence, not possession. It becomes cleaner when it is guided by compassion, not craving. An ending exposes dependency by showing you where your fear screams louder than your love. When someone leaves, love may say, "This hurts because I cared." Dependency says, "This cannot happen because I do not know how to be okay without them." Love feels sorrow. Dependency feels threat. Love mourns the person. Dependency mourns the loss of control. Love remembers with tenderness. Dependency replays with obsession. Love slowly releases what reality has made clear. Dependency keeps trying to negotiate with what has already ended. This is why you may find yourself reaching for the past after an ending. Old messages, old photos, old conversations, old signs, old promises. You are not always searching for love. Sometimes you are searching for a dose of emotional safety. You want the feeling back. You want the version of yourself that existed when the connection still felt secure. You want relief from the emptiness. But the danger is this. If you keep feeding the ache with memories, you may keep dependency alive long after love has lost its healthy form. There is nothing wrong with missing someone. Missing is human. Missing means something touched you. But when missing becomes self-abandonment, it begins to harm you. When you stop eating properly, stop sleeping peacefully, stop caring for your own life, stop seeing your own value, and spend every breath trying to mentally return to what ended, the wound is asking for attention, not because you are weak, but because something in you had become overly attached. The ending is not only asking you to let go of the person, it is asking you to heal the part of you that believed your wholeness lived in them. This is where the path becomes sacred, because an ending can become more than heartbreak. It can become a mirror. It can show you the child inside you who still fears being left. It can show you the part of you that learned to earn love by pleasing others. It can show you the old wound that believes distance means unworthiness. It can show you the hunger that mistakes attention for devotion. It can show you how quickly you forget yourself when someone becomes uncertain. These revelations are painful, but they are also precious. You cannot heal what you cannot see. Love does not need you to betray your own spirit to prove that it is real. If you have to keep lowering your needs, hiding your sadness, silencing your questions, or accepting emotional scraps just to keep someone near, you are not standing in love anymore. You are standing in fear. Love may ask you to be patient with someone's humanity, but dependency asks you to be patient with your own slow disappearance. Love makes you more honest. Dependency makes you more afraid. Love expands your heart. Dependency tightens your chest. There is a simple way to look at it. Love gives energy even when it is difficult. Dependency consumes energy even when it is sweet. Love helps you become more yourself. Dependency makes you shape yourself around the other person's availability. Love allows two people to meet as whole beings. Dependency turns one person into a lifeline and the other into a source of emotional weather. Love can survive boundaries. Dependency panics at boundaries. Love can hear truth. Dependency needs reassurance more than truth. When an ending happens, you may feel tempted to measure the connection by the size of your pain. You may think, if it hurts this much, it must have been true love. But pain alone does not prove love. Sometimes pain proves attachment. Sometimes pain proves fear. Sometimes pain proves that a wound has been touched. Sometimes pain proves that you had placed your identity somewhere unstable. True love can hurt, yes, but not all hurt is proof of true love. A chain can hurt when it breaks, not because the chain was good, but because your skin had grown around it. This is hard to hear because the mind wants to romanticize suffering. It wants to believe that the more you suffer, the more pure your love must be. But Buddhist wisdom does not glorify suffering. It studies suffering so it can end. It asks you to look honestly at the cause. Are you suffering because love was deep or because attachment was strong? Are you grieving the person as they truly were, or the role they played in protecting you from your own emptiness? Are you sad because something beautiful ended, or terrified because you have not yet learned how to stand alone with tenderness? These questions are not meant to make your love seem false. A connection can contain real love and still contain dependency. Human bonds are often mixed. You may have genuinely cared and still clung too tightly. You may have loved someone and still used their presence to avoid your own wounds. You may have shared real beauty and still depended on them in ways that were not healthy. The goal is not to deny the love. The goal is to separate the love from the fear, so the love can remain as wisdom and the fear can finally be healed. When dependency is exposed, the first instinct is often to run back. Not because the relationship is peaceful, but because the nervous system wants the familiar source of relief. This is why people return to places that hurt them. They are not always returning to happiness. They are returning to the thing that temporarily quiets the panic. The mind says, just hear their voice once more, just send one more message, just get one more sign, just make them understand. But often, each return deepens the wound because it teaches the self that peace must come from outside. Healing begins when you stop treating the other person as medicine for a wound they did not create alone and cannot heal for you. They may have touched the wound, they may have deepened it, they may have reminded you of it, but the root may be older. It may come from past abandonment, neglect, rejection, shame, or years of believing you had to be chosen to be enough. This is why an ending can feel larger than the actual relationship. You are not only grieving the present, you are grieving every old place inside you that says, please do not leave me again. Buddhist compassion asks you not to judge that part of yourself. Do not insult yourself for needing. Do not call yourself foolish for attaching. Do not hate the heart for wanting safety. Every being wants safety. Every being wants love. Every being wants to feel held. But compassion also means telling yourself the truth. Wanting love is natural. Losing yourself for love is suffering. Needing comfort is human. Making another person the only doorway to comfort is dangerous. Caring deeply is beautiful. Clinging desperately is painful. When an ending exposes dependency, it is inviting you to build an inner refuge. In Buddhism, refuge is not about escaping life. It is about finding a stable place within truth, awareness, and compassion. An inner refuge means you can feel pain without becoming pain. You can miss someone without chasing what harms you. You can grieve without deciding that your life is over. You can love without handing away your entire sense of self. You can say, this mattered to me, without saying, this must define me forever. This inner refuge is built slowly. It begins with small acts of returning to yourself. You wake up and care for your body even when the heart feels heavy. You breathe instead of reaching for the phone. You let the wave of longing rise and fall without obeying it immediately. You remind yourself that a feeling can be powerful without being a command. You speak gently to the part of you that wants to beg. You choose one peaceful action, then another, then another. In time, your nervous system begins to learn that absence is painful, but not fatal. This is one of the greatest lessons an ending can teach. Absence is not death. Silence is not the end of your worth. Someone's departure is not the disappearance of your future. The mind may tell you that you cannot survive without what left, but the breath says otherwise. Each breath becomes evidence. You are still here. You are hurting, but you are here. You are grieving, but you are here. You are uncertain, but you are here. And slowly, being here becomes the ground from which healing grows. Dependency often weakens self-trust. When you depend on someone else to define your emotional state, you stop listening to your own inner knowing. You ask, do they still care? More than, am I at peace? You ask, will they return? More than, was I truly safe there? You ask, how do I get them back? More than, what did I abandon in order to keep them? An ending can return these questions to their rightful place. It can teach you to trust your body again, your intuition again, your discomfort again, your quiet no again. Love does not ask you to ignore your inner warnings. Dependency does. Dependency will make you argue against your own nervous system. It will say, you are overreacting. You are asking for too much. Just wait a little longer. Be smaller. Need less. Accept this. But the body often knows when the soul is not safe. The tight chest, the restless sleep, the constant checking, the fear of speaking honestly, the relief when they are kind and the collapse when they are distant, All of these may be signs that the connection has become less like peace and more like withdrawal. When the ending arrives, the body may go through a kind of emotional detox. This is why it can feel so intense. You are not only missing the person, you are withdrawing from the pattern. The highs and lows, the waiting, the hope, the fear, the rare reward, the sudden distance, the reunion, the confusion, all of it may have trained your mind to crave intensity. Peace may feel empty at first because your system has grown used to emotional noise, but emptiness is not always emptiness. Sometimes it is the first quiet after a storm. This quiet can teach you what love is not. Love is not constant anxiety. Love is not chasing clarity from someone who benefits from confusion. Love is not needing to become less sensitive to survive another person's carelessness. Love is not being grateful for crumbs because you fear receiving nothing. Love is not a place where your dignity must kneel. Love is not the hunger to be chosen by someone who keeps making you doubt your value. And the quiet can also teach you what love is. Love is steadier than panic. Love can be honest without being cruel. Love can create closeness without swallowing identity. Love allows both people to breathe. Love respects the soul, not just the emotion. Love does not require constant proof because its actions carry truth. Love does not turn your nervous system into a battlefield. Love does not make you feel like peace is something you must earn by enduring pain. When dependency is present, endings feel like you have lost yourself. When love is present, endings feel like you have lost someone you valued. That difference matters. Losing someone is painful, but losing yourself is a deeper suffering. If the ending makes you realize that you no longer know what you enjoy, what you want, what you believe, what makes you calm, or what life looks like without them, then the ending is showing you where your self-connection was neglected. This is not a reason for shame. It is a call to return. Returning to yourself does not mean you stop loving them instantly. It means you stop abandoning yourself while loving them. It means you stop making their absence more important than your own presence. It means you stop treating your grief as proof that you should go back. It means you allow love to become blessing instead of bondage. You can say, "I loved you," and still say, "I must not lose myself again." You can say, "What we had mattered," and still say, "My peace matters too." Sometimes the most loving thing you can do after an ending is to stop turning the person into your prison. Let them be human. Let the story be complex. Let the good be good. Let the pain be pain. Let the ending be real. Dependency wants to keep the person frozen as the only source of meaning. Love allows them to become part of your path without remaining the owner of your path. Love can bow. Dependency clings. Love can bless. Dependency possesses. Love can learn. Dependency repeats. This is why endings are powerful spiritual tests. They ask whether you can honor what was without being trapped by it. They ask whether you can grieve without worshipping the past. They ask whether you can feel longing without obeying it blindly. They ask whether you can let someone leave your daily life without letting them take your inner life with them. They ask whether you are willing to become whole in the very place where you once felt broken. The ego may resist this. It may say, "If I let go, it means the love was not real." But that is not true. Letting go does not erase love. It purifies it. It removes the fear, the control, the obsession, the bargaining, the self-abandonment, and leaves behind what was genuine. Sometimes, after the fire of grief has passed, what remains is a quiet gratitude, not a desire to return, not a need to possess, just a soft recognition that something touched your life, taught you, changed you, and completed its season. This is love becoming wisdom. Dependency says, "Stay, so I do not have to face myself." Love says, "May truth guide both of us, even if the path separates." Dependency says, "Choose me, so I can feel worthy." Love says, I am learning to be worthy in my own eyes. Dependency says, I cannot be peaceful unless you come back. Love says, I am grieving, but I am still responsible for my peace. Dependency says, you are my home. Love says, you were part of my journey, but I must become home within myself. This is not easy. It may be one of the hardest lessons a human heart can learn, because dependency often forms around our tenderest wounds. It forms where we wanted to be loved better. It forms where we were tired of carrying ourselves alone. It forms where someone's attention felt like water after years of thirst. So when that person leaves, the thirst returns. But instead of running back to the same cup, wisdom asks you to find the spring within. The spring within is built through self-respect, daily care, honest reflection, spiritual practice, supportive connections, and the courage to sit with discomfort without letting it choose for you. It is built when you stop asking one person to rescue you from every old wound. It is built when you become patient with your own healing. It is built when you learn that loneliness is not a command to return to what hurt you. It is built when you allow silence to become a teacher instead of a threat. An ending exposes the difference between love and dependency, because love leaves you with tenderness, while dependency leaves you with terror. Love may hurt, but it does not tell you that you are nothing without the other. Dependency does. Love may miss, but it does not demand that you betray your growth. Dependency does. Love may remember, but it does not force you to live backward. Dependency does. Love may grieve, but it can still bow to impermanence. Dependency fights impermanence as if fighting change could bring peace. Buddhist wisdom does not ask you to cut your heart off. It asks you to open your eyes, see where you loved, see where you clung, see where you cared, see where you feared, see where you gave freely, see where you gave because you were afraid not to, see where the connection brought beauty, see where it became bondage. This kind of seeing is brave because it does not flatten the story into one simple label. It allows truth to be whole. And when truth becomes whole, healing becomes possible. You stop saying, it was all perfect, because that denies your pain. You stop saying, it was all meaningless, because that denies your heart. You begin to say, it was real and it taught me. It held beauty and it held lessons. I loved and I attached. I gave and I forgot myself. I lost and now I am returning. That is a mature kind of peace, not the peace of pretending, the peace of seeing clearly. So if an ending has left you trembling, ask gently, what part of this pain is love and what part is dependency? The love deserves honoring. The dependency deserves healing. The memories deserve tenderness. The patterns deserve honesty. The person may deserve forgiveness or distance or simply release. But your soul deserves freedom. Do not use the ending to prove that you were unlovable. Use it to learn where you stopped loving yourself. Do not use the absence to decide that life is empty. Use it to discover where you had emptied yourself for the sake of being kept. Do not use the grief to run back into bondage. Use it to become more awake, more rooted, more compassionate, and more whole. Some endings are compassion in disguise because they separate love from dependency. They show you what was sacred and what was fear. They show you what was connection and what was craving. They show you what was devotion and what was self-abandonment. And though the lesson may hurt, it can return you to a love that does not require losing yourself. Because the truest love does not make you smaller. It does not make you a prisoner of someone's presence. It does not turn your peace into a hostage. The truest love, even when it changes form, points you back to freedom. And if an ending has done that, if it has brought you back to your breath, your dignity, your center, and your own quiet strength, then perhaps it did not come to take love away from you. Perhaps it came to teach you how love feels when it no longer has fear wrapped around it. Carrying this from the difference between love and dependency, we now enter one of the hardest truths about endings. Sometimes the person who leaves does not only create pain, they create a mirror. Their absence shows you what comfort kept hiding. Their leaving may break the pattern that your peace was too afraid to question. There is a kind of teacher who does not arrive with gentle words, warm hands, or easy comfort. This teacher does not sit beside you and explain the lesson clearly. This teacher may leave, they may go silent, they may choose another path, they may close the door without giving you the answer your heart was begging for, and at first, you may not call them a teacher. You may call them the reason you cannot sleep. You may call them the person who wounded you. You may call them proof that life is unfair. But sometimes, after the storm has settled and your heart is no longer fighting reality with both hands, you begin to see something deeper. Their leaving taught you what their staying never could. Comfort has a way of keeping us asleep. When something feels familiar, even if it is not fully peaceful, the mind learns how to live inside it. You know what to expect. You know your role. You know where to place your hope. You know how to manage the silence, the distance, the small disappointments, and the emotional uncertainty. You may not be happy, but you are adjusted. You may not be free, but you are used to the cage. And because the familiar is less frightening than the unknown, you may call it home. You may tell yourself, this is enough. You may convince yourself that the little comfort you receive is worth the quiet pain you keep carrying. But when the person leaves, that comfort is disturbed. The life you were using to avoid yourself suddenly becomes unavailable. The routine breaks. The old emotional rhythm stops. The mind can no longer receive its usual dose of reassurance, even if that reassurance was small and inconsistent. And this is when the lesson begins. Not because the leaving feels good. It does not. It can feel like a deep inner shaking, but it forces you to face the places in yourself that comfort allowed you to ignore. Buddhist wisdom teaches that suffering can become a doorway when it is met with awareness. Pain by itself does not automatically make a person wiser. Some people suffer and become more bitter. Some suffer and become more closed. Some suffer and keep repeating the same patterns with different faces. But when pain is observed deeply, when you stop only asking, how do I get back what I lost, and begin asking, what is this revealing in me, then suffering becomes a teacher. The person who left may have created the wound, touched the wound, or awakened the wound, but the lesson is not only about them. The lesson is about the self you meet in their absence. Comfort rarely asks you the questions that absence asks. Comfort does not ask, why did you make one person the center of your peace? Comfort does not ask, why did you stay quiet when your heart needed honesty? Comfort does not ask, why did you keep accepting confusion as long as it came with small moments of warmth? Comfort does not ask, who are you when no one is choosing you? It lets you keep moving through life as you are, half awake, attached, afraid, but functional enough to avoid changing. Loss is different. Loss does not let you hide so easily. When someone leaves, the silence around you can become painfully loud. At first, you may fill it with thoughts about them. Where are they? Do they miss you? Did they care? Will they return? How could they move on? Why did they do it this way? But beneath those questions, there are deeper ones waiting. Why does their absence feel like the disappearance of your own worth? Why does their silence make you doubt your value? Why does being unchosen by one person make you feel unseen by all of life? These are not easy questions, but they are the questions that begin to separate your soul from dependency. The person who leaves may become your teacher because they show you where you are still looking outside for what must be built inside. Maybe you were looking for someone to finally make you feel secure. Maybe you were waiting for their love to erase old rejection. Maybe you were hoping their commitment would heal the fear that you were not enough. Maybe you wanted their presence to become proof that you were safe in the world. But no human being, no matter how loved, can carry the full weight of your unhealed self. When they leave, it may feel like they took your peace, but often what they reveal is that your peace had been placed outside of you for too long. This is not said to blame you. The heart learns attachment through many roads. Sometimes it learns it through childhood wounds, through neglect, through betrayal, through years of not being chosen gently, through relationships where love felt uncertain. So when someone finally gives warmth, even inconsistent warmth, the heart may cling. It may say, "This is my chance, this is my proof, this is the person who will finally make me feel whole." And then, when that person leaves, the pain feels larger than the present moment. It carries the weight of every old goodbye. It carries the echo of every time you felt left behind. This is why their leaving can feel like a collapse. But the collapse may not be the collapse of your life. It may be the collapse of an illusion, the illusion that another person can complete the work of your own healing. The illusion that being chosen by someone else will automatically make you stop abandoning yourself. The illusion that love alone can fix what awareness, self-respect, and inner practice must also heal. When the illusion falls, it hurts. But once it falls, you can finally build on truth. A person who stays in your comfort zone may never show you your hidden patterns. As long as they are there, you may keep believing that everything is fine. You may keep adjusting, you may keep giving, you may keep accepting emotional hunger as normal, you may keep saying, "At least they are still here." But presence alone is not proof of love. Someone can stay and still not meet you. Someone can stay and still not honor you. Someone can stay and still keep you anxious, small, and unsure. And sometimes the person who leaves teaches you more than the person who stayed too long with half a heart. Their leaving may teach you that access is not the same as intimacy. Just because someone is in your life does not mean they are truly with you. Just because you can speak to them does not mean you are being heard. Just because there is contact does not mean there is connection. Many people are comforted by access because access feels like hope. A message, a visit, a reply, a small sign, a familiar routine. These things can keep attachment alive. But when access ends, you are forced to examine what was actually there. Was there peace? Was there respect? Was there mutual care? Was there emotional safety? Or were you surviving on moments that kept you from admitting the emptiness between them? This kind of truth can be sharp, but it is clean. It does not come to destroy you. It comes to remove confusion. Buddhist wisdom values clear seeing because without clear seeing, compassion becomes mixed with delusion. You may feel compassion for someone and still need to accept that they were not healthy for your path. You may understand their wounds and still recognize the way their actions affected you. You may forgive them inwardly and still not return to the same pattern. The teacher who leaves may show you that understanding someone does not mean you must continue being wounded by them. Comfort often tells you to tolerate what awareness would ask you to release. Comfort says, "It is not that bad." Awareness says, "But is it peaceful?" Comfort says, "You already know them." Awareness says, "But do they truly see you?" Comfort says, "Starting again will be hard." Awareness says, "Staying here is already hard." Comfort says, "Maybe they will change." Awareness says, "What has reality shown consistently?" When the person leaves, comfort loses its voice for a while. You are left with awareness, and awareness may not be gentle at first, but it is honest. This is why the absence of someone can become a spiritual classroom. Every day without them reveals something. The first day may reveal panic. The next may reveal longing. Another may reveal anger. Another may reveal relief. Another may reveal how much of your time was spent managing emotional uncertainty. Another may reveal how deeply you had ignored yourself. Another may reveal that you are stronger than the story your fear told you. The lessons do not arrive all at once. They come in waves, and each wave asks you to stay present instead of running backward. At first, you may think healing means forgetting them, but healing is not always forgetting. Sometimes healing means remembering without losing yourself. It means allowing the memory to exist without turning it into a command. It means letting a song hurt without using the hurt as proof that you should return. It means seeing their face in your mind and still choosing your peace. It means understanding that someone can remain part of your story without remaining the place where your soul waits. The person who leaves may teach you the difference between longing and guidance. Longing says, go back because you miss them. Guidance says, pause and ask what going back would cost. Longing remembers the sweetness. Guidance remembers the whole truth. Longing wants relief now. Guidance wants freedom later. Longing is not evil. It is human. But longing is not always wise. If you obey every longing, you may return to what your spirit is trying to outgrow. This is why Buddhist practice asks you to observe craving instead of becoming its servant. Craving is loud. It says, I need this. I cannot be okay without this. I must fix this. I must get them back. But awareness is quieter. It says, breathe. Feel this. Do not rush. Watch what the mind is doing. Watch how it creates stories. Watch how it reaches for relief. Watch how it fears emptiness. When you observe craving, you begin to understand it. And what you understand no longer controls you in the same way. The person who leaves may be the reason you finally learn how to sit with craving instead of being dragged by it. This lesson is powerful because many people confuse emotional intensity with truth. They think that because the feeling is strong, the connection must be right. But strong feelings can come from old wounds, uncertainty, fear, and unfinished patterns. Peace is sometimes quieter than attachment, so the mind may not recognize it at first. If you have lived on emotional highs and lows, calm may feel empty. If you have been trained to chase love, steady love may feel unfamiliar. If you have confused anxiety with connection, someone leaving may feel like losing the most important thing in your life, even if what you lost was the cycle that kept you unsteady. The teacher who leaves can show you your relationship with uncertainty. While they were present, uncertainty may have hidden inside the connection. You wondered what they felt, where things were going, whether they would stay, whether you were enough. But once they leave, uncertainty becomes wider. Now you do not know what happens next. You do not know who you are becoming. You do not know when the pain will soften. You do not know what life will bring, and this is where your spiritual practice deepens. Can you stand in uncertainty without trying to control everything? Can you let life unfold without forcing an answer from a closed door? Can you trust that not knowing is not the same as being abandoned? Comfort often gives the illusion of certainty. Even if the situation is painful, at least it is known. The mind likes what is known because it can prepare for it. But growth often begins where certainty ends. The person who leaves may push you into unknown space, and in that space you begin to discover parts of yourself that never had room to appear. Courage, discernment, patience, self-protection, prayer, stillness, boundaries, a deeper relationship with your own breath. These are not small things. They are the roots of a new life. Their leaving may also teach you that love cannot be forced into permanence by effort. You can be kind, you can be loyal, you can be patient, you can be understanding, you can communicate clearly, you can give your best. But you cannot make another person meet you with the same depth. You cannot make someone ready. You cannot make someone value what they are not able or willing to honor. You cannot love someone into becoming the person your heart needs them to be. This is painful, but it is freeing. Because once you understand it, you stop exhausting yourself trying to control another person's path. Buddhist wisdom does not teach passivity. It teaches right effort. Right effort means you do what is wholesome, honest, and wise, but you do not cling to controlling the outcome. You speak truth, but you do not force someone to understand. You love sincerely, but you do not demand permanence from what is unstable. You act with compassion, but you do not sacrifice your inner peace to rescue what refuses to be conscious. The person who leaves may teach you right effort by showing you the limit of your effort. They may teach you where love ends and control begins. This can be humbling. You may realize how much you tried to manage the connection. You tried to say things the perfect way. You tried to time your emotions. You tried to be less needy, less hurt, less direct, less human. You tried to become easy enough to keep. But love that requires you to become unreal is not a safe home. The one who leaves may teach you that being abandoned by another is painful, but abandoning yourself to prevent abandonment is a deeper wound. Their absence may reveal how often you betrayed your own knowing. Perhaps your body felt uneasy, but you ignored it. Perhaps your heart sensed distance, but you explained it away. Perhaps you saw the imbalance, but you focused on potential. Perhaps you knew you were tired, but you called it patience. Once they leave, the truth becomes harder to deny. And while this may create regret, it can also restore your self-trust. You begin to say, "Next time, I will listen sooner. Next time, I will not silence the quiet truth inside me. Next time, I will not wait for pain to become unbearable before I call it real." This is how the person who leaves becomes a teacher your comfort could never become. Comfort kept you adjusted. Their leaving makes you awake. Comfort kept you hoping. Their leaving makes you honest. Comfort kept you attached to the familiar. Their leaving opens the question of freedom. Comfort asked you to survive. Their leaving asks you to transform. Transformation does not always feel beautiful while it is happening. Sometimes it feels like confusion. Sometimes it feels like grief. Sometimes it feels like anger rising from places where you once tolerated too much. Sometimes it feels like loneliness. Sometimes it feels like not knowing how to live without the old emotional structure. But beneath all of that, something is being rebuilt. Not loudly, not quickly, but deeply. Your relationship with yourself is being rebuilt. Your understanding of love is being rebuilt. Your ability to choose from wisdom instead of fear is being rebuilt. The person who leaves may also teach you compassion without possession. This is one of the hardest lessons. It is easy to confuse love with the desire to keep someone close. But sometimes, love matures when you stop needing to possess the person. You can wish them peace without needing access. You can honor what they gave without denying what they could not give. You can accept that they were part of your awakening, even if they were not part of your future. This kind of compassion is not weakness. It is freedom from the grip that says, "Because you mattered, you must stay." Some people are not meant to remain in your life in the form you hoped. Some come as mirrors. Some come as lessons. Some come as catalysts. Some come to reveal your wounds. Some come to awaken your boundaries. Some come to show you what you desire. Some come to show you what you must never again abandon in yourself. This does not reduce their importance. It gives their presence a different kind of meaning. Not every sacred connection is permanent. Some are sacred because they change you and then leave you with the responsibility to live differently. This is where grief can turn into wisdom. At first, grief says, "They left me." Later, wisdom may say, "Their leaving revealed me." At first, grief says, "I lost love." Later, wisdom may say, "I found the places where I was confusing love with fear." At first, grief says, "My life has been interrupted." Later, wisdom may say, My unconscious pattern has been interrupted. This shift does not happen by force. It happens through reflection, patience, and the willingness to stop making the person the only subject of the story. Because the story is not only about them, it is also about you. Your healing, your awakening, your return, your next choices. Your ability to become softer without becoming weaker, wiser without becoming colder, open without becoming available for the same wound. If you make the story only about the person who left, you may remain trapped in their absence. But when you allow the story to include your growth, the absence becomes part of the path instead of the whole path. The person who leaves may teach you what you truly value. When they are gone, you may begin to see what you miss and what you do not miss. You may miss the laughter, but not the anxiety. You may miss the closeness, but not the confusion. You may miss the routine, but not the self-doubt. You may miss the dream, but not the way you had to carry it alone. This distinction matters. It helps you stop romanticizing the whole experience. It allows you to honor the good without returning to the harm. It teaches you to choose more wisely in the future. They may also teach you the importance of boundaries, not the harsh kind that comes from bitterness, but the clean kind that comes from self-respect. A boundary says, I can care about you and still protect my peace. It says, I can understand your pain and still not let it become my home. It says, I can forgive, but I do not have to reopen the door. It says, my compassion includes me. Comfort may have convinced you that boundaries would cause loss, but the ending may teach you that the absence of boundaries already caused a different kind of loss, the loss of yourself. When comfort is present, you may avoid boundaries because you fear shaking the relationship. You fear being too much. You fear asking for clarity. You fear losing the little you have. But when the person leaves anyway, you may realize that self-abandonment did not protect you. Silence did not guarantee staying. Overgiving did not guarantee loyalty. Being easy to keep did not make you truly held. This realization can hurt, but it also gives you back power. It teaches you that in the future, you do not have to trade your truth for temporary closeness. The person who leaves may teach you that your worth does not depend on someone's capacity to recognize it. This lesson may be the deepest of all. Their inability to love you well does not prove you were unworthy of love. Their silence does not measure your value. Their departure does not define your essence. People leave for many reasons. Their wounds, their fears, their limits, their desires, their confusion, their path. Not everything they do is a statement about you, but attachment personalizes everything. It says, if they left, I must be lacking. Wisdom says, if they left, something ended. Now I must return to truth. Returning to truth means you stop using another person's choice as the final judge of your being. You may learn from the connection. You may admit your mistakes. You may see where you need to grow, but you do not reduce your whole worth to one ending. A flower is not worthless because someone walks past it without noticing. A song is not meaningless because one person refuses to listen. Your value does not disappear because someone could not stay. This does not mean you should pretend their leaving did not matter. It mattered because your heart mattered. It hurt because you are human. But the pain must not become a false identity. You are not the person who was left. You are the person who is learning. You are the person who is waking. You are the person who is being invited into a deeper life. The leaving is an event. It is not your name. Buddhist wisdom often points us back to impermanence. The person who leaves becomes a teacher of impermanence in a direct and unforgettable way. They show you that even what feels close can change. Even what feels certain can shift. Even what feels like home can become a memory. This truth can feel frightening, but it can also make life more sacred. If nothing is guaranteed, then presence matters. Honesty matters. Awareness matters. Loving without clinging matters. Choosing peace while you can matters. Not waiting until lost to become awake matters. Impermanence does not make love meaningless. It makes love more conscious. It teaches you not to sleepwalk through connection. It teaches you not to postpone gratitude. It teaches you not to build your entire identity on something changing. It teaches you to hold people with care, not control. To appreciate them, not possess them. To be present with them, not use them to escape yourself. The person who leaves may teach this lesson through pain, but the wisdom can remain long after the pain has softened. Their leaving may also teach you about forgiveness, not the kind of forgiveness that rushes back into closeness, not the kind that pretends harm did not happen, but the kind that releases the poison of replaying the wound forever. Forgiveness may begin as a decision to stop letting their action continue living inside your body as daily suffering. It may mean saying, "I do not approve of what happened, but I refuse to let it keep owning my mind." This kind of forgiveness is not a gift to the other person alone. It is a release for your own heart. Sometimes you may not be ready to forgive. That is okay. Do not force spiritual language over honest pain. Forced forgiveness can become another way of abandoning yourself. First, tell the truth. First, feel what needs to be felt. First, admit what hurt. First, allow the anger to reveal where your boundary was crossed. Then, slowly, when the heart is ready, forgiveness may come as space. Not necessarily reconciliation, not forgetting, space. The ability to remember without becoming trapped in the same fire. The one who leaves may teach you that peace does not come from getting every answer. Comfort often wants closure in the form of explanation. It wants the final conversation, the full apology, the perfect understanding, the sentence that makes the pain make sense. But life does not always offer that. Sometimes people leave without the maturity to explain. Sometimes they cannot give what they do not understand in themselves. Sometimes the answer you want would only create more questions. The teacher in their leaving may be this: you can heal without full explanation. You can release without being fully understood. You can move forward without every piece of the story in your hands. This is not easy for the mind. The mind loves completion. It wants to organize pain into a neat shape. But the heart can find peace through acceptance, even when the mind lacks every answer. Acceptance does not mean you like what happened. It means you stop tearing yourself apart, demanding that reality become different before you allow yourself to breathe. It means you say, "This happened. I may never know everything, but I will not keep my life frozen at the doorway of someone else's silence." This is the moment the teacher has done their work. Not because they return, not because they apologize, not because the past changes, but because you change. You stop waiting for them to become the source of your peace. You stop handing your future to the person who left your present. You stop believing your healing depends on their permission. You begin to gather yourself back piece by piece, breath by breath, choice by choice. And one day, you may notice something quiet and surprising. You are not thinking of them in the same way. The memory is there, but the chain is weaker. The story is there, but the pain is not as sharp. The person mattered, but they are no longer the center. You can bless the lesson without wanting the wound back. You can admit that their leaving hurt you, but also that it awakened you. You can see that comfort might have kept you in the same place for years, but the ending forced you to grow in months. This is why the person who leaves may become the teacher your comfort could never become. Comfort gave you rest, but not always truth. Their leaving gave you pain, but also revelation. Comfort kept the surface calm, but their absence exposed the deep waters. Comfort allowed you to continue, but the ending asked you to become. And though you may never thank them directly, though you may never speak again, though the human part of you may still feel sadness when certain memories return, the wiser part of you may understand. They were not only the one who left, they were the one who showed you where you needed to return to yourself. So let the lesson be received without worshipping the pain. You do not have to glorify what hurt you. You do not have to pretend the leaving was gentle. You do not have to deny the nights you struggled or the tears you carried. But you can choose to learn. You can choose to let the absence become awareness. You can choose to let the wound become a doorway. You can choose to let the ending teach you how to stand in your own life with more honesty, more tenderness, and more strength. Some endings are compassion in disguise because they bring teachers we would never choose, but deeply need. The person who leaves may teach you self-respect. They may teach you non-attachment. They may teach you the danger of placing your worth in another person's hands. They may teach you that love without self-loss is possible. They may teach you that comfort is not always freedom. They may teach you that your soul can survive the goodbye your fear thought would destroy you. And when the lesson settles, you may no longer see their leaving as only an empty space. You may see it as the place where your awakening began. You may see that the door they closed became the silence where your own wisdom finally spoke. You may see that their absence did not end your life. It introduced you to the part of yourself that had been waiting beneath your attachment, quiet, patient, and ready to rise. Carrying this from the last lesson, where the person who leaves becomes the teacher comfort could never become, we now meet the place where suffering often becomes heavier than the ending itself. The ending may happen once, but clinging makes the heart relive it 1,000 times. Life may close the door in one moment, but the mind can keep standing there for years, bleeding from the same memory, waiting for what has already completed its season. There is a pain that comes from an ending, and there is another pain that comes from refusing to let the ending be real. The first pain is natural. It is the ache of change, the shock of separation, the silence after something familiar disappears. But the second pain is created by the mind. It is the suffering that begins when you keep reaching for what is no longer reaching back, when you keep watering a flower that has already returned to the earth, when you keep asking yesterday to become tomorrow again. This is where Buddhist wisdom becomes deeply practical. It does not say, do not feel. It does not say, do not grieve. It does not say, pretend you are above human pain. No, the heart must feel what it feels. Tears may come, memories may rise, the body may miss the routine, the voice, the presence, the old dream, the version of life it had prepared for. But Buddhism gently points to the difference between grief and clinging. Grief is the heart bowing to what has changed. Clinging is the mind fighting that change as if resistance can bring back what is gone. An ending can wound you, but clinging keeps touching the wound. It keeps opening the place that is trying to close. It keeps returning to the same thought, the same question, the same scene, the same message, the same hope, the same regret. It says, maybe if I think about it long enough, I can change it. It says, maybe if I suffer enough, life will return what it took. It says, maybe if I refuse to accept this, it will not be true. But reality does not become softer because we fight it. It often becomes heavier. This is why clinging to what is finished can create more suffering than the ending itself. The ending may have lasted a day, a conversation, a decision, a silence, a goodbye. But clinging stretches that moment across weeks, months, and sometimes years. It takes one closed door and turns it into a prison. It takes one absence and makes it the center of your identity. It takes one change and turns it into proof that nothing good can remain. The ending becomes painful, but the story you keep building around it becomes the deeper cage. The heart often says, I cannot let go because it mattered. But letting go does not mean it did not matter. This is one of the great misunderstandings. People think release is betrayal. They think if they stop suffering, it means the love was not real. They think if they stop waiting, it means the memories were meaningless. They think if they begin to heal, they are dishonoring what they lost. But suffering is not the only way to prove that something mattered. Peace can honor the past too. Wisdom can honor the past. Gratitude can honor the past. A quiet blessing can honor the past more deeply than endless self-punishment. Clinging often hides behind loyalty. You may tell yourself, I am just being faithful to what we had. But sometimes what you call loyalty is the fear of entering a life where that person, that dream, or that old version of yourself no longer leads the story. You may not be holding on because the past is still alive. You may be holding on because you are afraid of who you must become without it. That fear is understandable. Endings do not only remove people, they remove the identity you built around them. If you were the one who waited, who loved, who hoped, who carried, who forgave, who dreamed, who kept the story alive, then letting go can feel like losing a part of your name. Who are you if you are no longer waiting? Who are you if you are no longer fighting for it? Who are you if you stop checking, stop hoping, stop replaying, stop explaining, stop defending the past to yourself? This is where clinging becomes familiar suffering. Pain gives the mind something to hold. Pain gives it a role. Pain gives it a place to stand. Healing, strangely, can feel like stepping into open space with no script. Buddhist wisdom teaches that attachment says, "This must remain for me to be whole." But life keeps showing that nothing remains in the same form forever. The body changes, relationships change, dreams change, seasons change. Even the self you were yesterday is not fully the same self listening today. When we cling to what is finished, we demand permanence from a world built on movement. It is like trying to hold river water in your fist. The tighter you squeeze, the more you suffer, and still the water goes. This does not mean you must stop loving. It means you must stop confusing love with possession. Love can say, "This was beautiful, and now it has changed." Attachment says, "Because it was beautiful, it must not change." Love can grieve and still bow. Attachment grieves and then argues with the ground. Love remembers and becomes wiser. Attachment remembers and becomes trapped. Love lets the past become part of the path. Attachment turns the past into a room with no door. Many people suffer not because the ending is still happening, but because they keep recreating it inside the mind. They wake up and replay the conversation. They wonder what they should have said. They search for signs they missed. They blame themselves. Then they blame the other person. Then they return to hope. Then they return to anger. Then they return to sadness. The body is in the present, but the mind is living at the scene of the ending. Days pass, but inwardly nothing moves. This is why awareness matters. Without awareness, the mind becomes a storyteller that does not know when to stop. It adds meaning to everything. Their silence means you were not enough. Their leaving means you were never loved. The closed door means your future is ruined. The loss means life is against you. But are these truths, or are they wounds speaking? An ending is already painful, but when the mind adds false meanings to it, the pain becomes heavier. You are no longer only grieving what happened, you are grieving the identity your mind created from it. One person leaving does not mean you are unlovable. One dream ending does not mean your life is empty. One door closing does not mean all doors are closed. One season finishing does not mean joy has abandoned you. But clinging often makes one event feel like the whole truth of your life. It narrows your vision until all you can see is what left. It makes the absence look larger than everything that remains. And this is how suffering deepens, not because life has no light, but because attachment keeps your eyes fixed on the place where the light changed. The mind may say, "I just need closure." Sometimes closure is needed. A clear conversation can help. An honest apology can soften the heart. But sometimes the search for closure becomes another form of clinging. You keep waiting for the perfect explanation before you allow yourself to heal. You keep believing that if they finally understand your pain, then you can move on. You keep needing the person who left to unlock your freedom. But your peace cannot depend forever on someone else's maturity. If they cannot explain, if they cannot apologize, if they cannot see you clearly, your healing must still belong to you. Closure is not always a final conversation. Sometimes closure is accepting that their actions already gave you enough information. Sometimes closure is admitting that repeated confusion is an answer. Sometimes closure is realizing that the apology you wanted may never come, but your life is still asking to be lived. Sometimes closure is not hearing them say, "I understand." Sometimes closure is you saying, "I understand enough to stop hurting myself with what I cannot change." Clinging also creates suffering because it keeps the nervous system trapped in a state of waiting. Waiting for a message, waiting for a return, waiting for a sign, waiting for regret, waiting for the past to soften and come back in a better form. This waiting looks quiet from the outside, but inside it is exhausting. The body never fully rests because it keeps listening for footsteps from a door that has already closed. The heart cannot fully heal because it keeps preparing to reopen. The mind cannot fully enter the present because it keeps living as if the past is about to call its name. This kind of waiting can become a hidden addiction. Not because you are weak, but because hope can become a powerful emotional drug. A small sign gives relief. A memory gives warmth. A possible return gives energy. But then silence comes again, and the heart falls again. This cycle can keep you tied to what is finished far longer than love itself would require. You are no longer being nourished by the connection. You are being pulled by the possibility of relief. Buddhist practice asks you to notice craving as craving, not to hate it, not to shame yourself for it, just to see it clearly. When the urge rises to check, to reach out, to replay, to fantasize, to reopen the wound, pause and name it gently. This is craving, not this is truth, not this is destiny, not this is proof I must go back. Just this is craving moving through me. When you can name a feeling without becoming it, you begin to create space. And in that space, freedom starts. A feeling can be intense and still not be wise. This is one of the most important lessons. The strength of longing does not prove that the past is meant to return. The size of your sadness does not prove that the ending was wrong. The ache in your chest does not mean you should go back to what broke your peace. Feelings are real, but they are not always instructions. They are weather passing through the body. Some storms are loud, some last longer than expected. But even a storm does not have the authority to decide the direction of your life. Clinging makes you obey every storm. It says, "Because I miss them, I must return. Because I am lonely, I must reach out. Because I am hurting, the ending must be wrong." But wisdom says, "I can miss something and still know it is finished. I can feel lonely and still not betray my healing. I can hurt and still trust the path of release." This is not easy. It takes practice. It takes patience. It takes returning to the breath again and again when the mind tries to drag you backward. There is also suffering in clinging because it blocks the lesson. Every ending carries information. It shows you what was real, what was missing, what you ignored, what you needed, what you feared, what you were ready to outgrow. But if you cling only to the desire for return, you may miss the wisdom the ending came to offer. You may spend all your energy trying to restore the old form instead of understanding why the form collapsed. You may ask, how do I get it back? When the deeper question is, what did this come to teach me? The ending itself may be painful, but it can be clean. It can say, this chapter is complete. Clinging makes it messy. Clinging adds denial, bargaining, obsession, self-blame, resentment, and fantasy. Clinging turns the ending into a long argument with life. And because life is already moving, the one who argues becomes tired. The river continues. The season changes. The door remains closed. But the mind stands still, holding a broken piece of the past and asking it to become whole again. This is why some people feel stuck long after the event has passed. Time has moved, but attachment has not. The calendar changes, but the inner story remains in the same place. They may go to work, speak to people, laugh sometimes, even build new routines, but inside, part of them is still waiting at the old door. They have not fully allowed the ending to be an ending. And until the heart accepts the reality of completion, it cannot fully receive the gift of a new beginning. Acceptance does not mean you like what happened. It does not mean you agree with how someone treated you. It does not mean you pretend the loss was easy. Acceptance means you stop demanding that the past become different before you allow yourself to live. It means you stop using resistance as a way to stay connected to what left. It means you say, this happened, it hurt, it changed me, but I will not keep turning it into my whole life. This is where release begins, not with a dramatic moment, but with small, honest choices. You stop rereading what reopens the wound. You stop asking questions that have already answered themselves. You stop feeding thoughts that make you feel powerless. You stop telling the same story in a way that keeps you trapped. You stop calling self-punishment devotion. You stop visiting the old pain as if it is a sacred place. You begin to choose peace, not because the past did not matter, but because your life still matters too. Clinging can also make you loyal to a version of someone that no longer exists. People change. Sometimes the person you miss is not the person standing in reality now. You miss who they were in the beginning. You miss who they became in your dreams. You miss who they were for a moment when everything felt possible. But the ending may have revealed who they could not continue being, or who they chose not to be, or who they truly were when comfort was removed. To cling to an old version of someone is to suffer over a ghost while ignoring the truth that life has already shown you. This happens with dreams too. You may cling to a plan because it once gave you purpose, but perhaps the plan no longer fits the person you are becoming. You may cling to an identity because it once protected you, but now it limits you. You may cling to a friendship, a place, a role, a desire, a habit, not because it is alive, but because you do not know who you are without it. Endings expose this. They show that what you thought was love may sometimes be fear of emptiness. And yet, emptiness is not always the enemy. In Buddhist wisdom, emptiness can be space. Space for truth, space for breath, space for a new way of being, space for the parts of you that were buried under attachment. When something ends, the empty space first feels like absence. But if you do not rush to fill it, it may become a place of awakening. You may begin to hear your own needs again. You may begin to notice the exhaustion you had normalized. You may begin to feel the difference between loneliness and peace. You may begin to realize that the silence you feared is not empty of life. It is empty of the old noise. Clinging prevents this space from becoming sacred. It fills the silence with replay. It fills the body with tension. It fills the present with ghosts. It keeps the inner room crowded with someone who is no longer there. Release does not erase memory, but it gives memory its proper place. Memory becomes a visitor, not a ruler. It can enter, teach, soften, and leave. It does not get to sit on the throne of your life. There is a gentle discipline in learning how to let a memory pass. When it comes, you do not have to fight it. Fighting a memory can make it stronger. You also do not have to follow it into every old hallway. You can notice it and breathe. You can say, a memory is here. You can let the body feel what rises. You can offer kindness to the ache. Then you can return to the present, the cup in your hand, the air in the room, the ground beneath you, the life that is still here. This is how the mind slowly learns that the past can be remembered without being relived. Clinging creates suffering because it refuses this return. It keeps pulling the mind away from the only place peace can be found, which is now. The past cannot be changed. The future cannot be controlled, but the present can be inhabited. In this moment you can breathe, you can soften your shoulders, you can choose not to send the message. You can choose not to reopen the old wound. You can choose to eat, rest, walk, pray, clean, write, speak kindly to yourself. These small actions may not feel powerful at first, but they are how the soul returns from exile. The ending itself may have taken something from you, but clinging can take much more if you are not careful. It can take your sleep. It can take your appetite. It can take your joy. It can take your attention. It can take your ability to notice the people who are still present. It can take your trust in life. It can take your sense of possibility. This is why release is not just spiritual, it is protective. It protects the life that remains from being consumed by the life that ended. Some people fear that if they release, they will become cold. But release is not coldness. Release is not saying, I never cared. Release is saying, I cared deeply, and now I must care for myself too. It is saying, this was part of my life, but it cannot be allowed to swallow my whole life. It is saying, I can bless what was real without staying chained to what is gone. It is saying, I will not make my suffering the monument to my love. There is a deep compassion in this. Compassion for yourself. Compassion for the person you were when you did not know how to let go. Compassion for the part of you that kept hoping. Compassion for the part that still aches. Compassion for the old dream that could not survive reality. Compassion does not force release. It makes release possible. The heart opens more easily when it is not being attacked. You cannot shame yourself into freedom. You can only become aware, honest and kind enough to stop holding what burns. Clinging often comes with self-blame. You may think, if I had done more, it would not have ended. If I had spoken differently, they would have stayed. If I had been better, the door would still be open. Sometimes, yes, endings contain lessons about our actions. It is wise to reflect. But reflection is not the same as self-torture. Reflection asks, what can I learn? Self-torture says, how can I keep hurting myself with what I cannot change? If you made mistakes, learn from them. Repair where repair is possible. But do not make your life a courtroom where the past is endlessly judged and you are always guilty. This is another way clinging creates suffering. It keeps searching for control in what is already complete. Blame can feel like control, because if you can find the perfect reason, maybe you can prevent all future pain. But life cannot be controlled that way. People have their own minds, wounds, choices, and karma. Not every ending is caused by one mistake. Not every loss could have been prevented by better words. Not every closed door is evidence that you failed. Sometimes things end because their conditions no longer support their continuation. This is the nature of all conditioned things. Buddhist wisdom often speaks of causes and conditions. Things arise when conditions come together. Things pass when those conditions change. A relationship needs mutual presence, honesty, care, timing, capacity, and willingness. A dream needs energy, alignment, effort, opportunity, and truth. A season continues only while its conditions remain. When those conditions dissolve, the form dissolves too. Clinging suffers because it wants the form to stay even after the conditions are gone. This understanding can soften the heart. It helps you stop turning every ending into a personal attack. The flower wilts not because it hates you, but because its conditions changed. The day ends not because you were unworthy of light, but because evening has come. A connection may end not because your soul has no value, but because the causes that held it together are no longer present. This does not remove the ache, but it removes some of the poison. You can grieve without making the universe your enemy. When clinging loosens, you begin to see the ending more clearly. Not only as loss, but as completion. Completion may still hurt. Completion may still leave silence. Completion may still require tears. But it has dignity. It allows the chapter to be what it was without forcing it to become the whole book. It allows the person to be part of your path without becoming the owner of your future. It allows the lesson to remain without keeping the wound open. This is how peace slowly enters. It does not always enter as happiness. Sometimes it enters as less resistance. One day you notice you did not replay the memory as long. Another day you notice you can hear their name without collapsing. Another day you notice you no longer want the old life back in the same way. Another day you notice that your breath feels deeper. Another day you realize the ending still matters, but it no longer defines the whole sky. This is quiet healing. It may not look dramatic, but it is sacred. You do not have to rush this process. Rushing can become another form of violence against the heart. Some endings need time to be digested. Some losses need space. Some memories need to rise many times before they lose their sharpness. But time alone does not heal if clinging keeps feeding the wound. Time helps when awareness walks with it. Time helps when you stop reopening what life is trying to close. Time helps when you choose truth over fantasy, breath over obsession, self-respect over emotional hunger. The question is not, how do I erase what happened? The question is, how do I stop making what happened the center of my suffering? You may never erase it, and perhaps you do not need to. Some things become part of the texture of your life, but they do not have to remain chains. They can become wisdom. They can become tenderness. They can become discernment. They can become a quiet strength that helps you love more consciously next time. There is a moment in release when you stop asking life to return the old thing and begin asking life to grow the new you. This is a holy shift. Before, your prayer may have been, bring it back. Later, it becomes, help me understand. Then, help me let go. Then, help me become free. Then, help me love without losing myself again. This is how the ending becomes part of awakening. Not because the pain was pleasant, but because it led you deeper into truth. Clinging says the ending is the enemy. Wisdom says unconscious attachment is the deeper suffering. The ending may have broken the form, but clinging breaks your relationship with the present. The ending may have removed someone from your life, but clinging removes you from your own life. The ending may have created silence, but clinging fills the silence with torment. The ending may have closed a door, but clinging keeps you refusing every open window. So if you are holding something that has already finished, be gentle, but be honest. Ask yourself, is this memory helping me heal, or is it keeping me stuck? Is this hope rooted in truth, or is it fear refusing to accept reality? Am I honoring love, or am I feeding pain? Am I grieving, or am I negotiating with what has already ended? These questions can hurt, but they also open the hand. And that is what release often feels like. Not throwing something away, but opening the hand. You do not have to curse what ended. You do not have to deny what was beautiful. You do not have to pretend you never wanted it. You simply stop squeezing so tightly that your own hand begins to bleed. You allow what is finished to be finished. You allow what is gone to be gone. You allow what changed to change. You allow yourself to remain, because you do remain. Beneath the grief, you remain. Beneath the longing, you remain. Beneath the old story, you remain. The ending did not erase you. The absence did not empty you of worth. The closed door did not cancel your path. You are still here, breathing, learning, slowly returning. And every time you choose not to cling, even for one moment, you reclaim a piece of your life from the past. Some endings are compassion in disguise because they teach you that the ending itself is not always the deepest wound. Sometimes the deepest wound is the way you keep fighting what is already complete. Sometimes the pain is not only in what left, but in the belief that you cannot live unless it returns. Sometimes freedom begins when you stop asking the past to save you and start allowing the present to hold you. So let what is finished be finished, not because it did not matter, but because it did. Let it rest in the place where completed things belong. Carry the lesson, not the chain. Carry the tenderness, not the torment. Carry the wisdom, not the wound. And when your mind tries to run back to the closed door, breathe and return. Return to your body. Return to this moment. Return to the life that is still waiting for you. The ending may have happened once, but you do not have to keep living it forever. The door may be closed, but your life is not. The chapter may be complete, but your spirit is still becoming. And the more you release what has already served its time, the more space you create for peace to enter without having to fight the ghosts of what could not stay. Carrying this from the last lesson, where clinging to what is finished creates more suffering than the ending itself, we now arrive at a softer but difficult truth. Once the hand begins to open, once the heart stops fighting the closed door, another feeling may appear beneath the pain. It may not look like joy at first. It may not feel like a blessing. It may arrive as disappointment, silence, delay, or loss. But sometimes, what first breaks your expectation is the very thing that begins to restore your peace. Why peace sometimes arrives dressed as disappointment. There are disappointments that feel like life has misunderstood your heart. You wanted something deeply. You waited for it. You hoped for it. You may have prayed for it, planned around it, adjusted your life for it, imagined how calm you would feel if it finally happened. Then it did not happen. The person did not stay. The answer did not come. The door did not open. The promise did not become real. The future you held in your mind slipped away, and suddenly your chest felt heavy with a question you could not silence. Why did life deny me what I believed would make me happy? But what if life was not denying you peace? What if life was protecting peace from the form you thought it had to take? What if the disappointment was not the opposite of blessing, but the disguise blessing wore because your attachment would not have accepted it any other way? This is one of the hardest things to understand while the wound is fresh. The mind sees only what did not happen. It sees the absence, the delay, the rejection, the plan that collapsed. But wisdom asks you to look deeper. Not every disappointment is a wall. Some disappointments are hidden doors. The heart often believes peace will arrive through getting what it wants. If they come back, I will be peaceful. If the plan works, I will be peaceful. If I am chosen, I will be peaceful. If the apology comes, I will be peaceful. If life follows the picture in my mind, I will finally rest. But Buddhist wisdom teaches that peace built on conditions is always fragile. If your peace depends entirely on one person, one outcome, one answer, or one version of life, then your peace is not free. It is held hostage by circumstances. The moment the condition changes, your calm collapses. This is why disappointment can become a strange mercy. It reveals where your peace was dependent on something unstable. It shows you the place where you had quietly said, "I cannot be okay unless life gives me this." And when life does not give it, the first feeling is pain. But beneath that pain is an invitation. You are being asked to discover a peace that does not depend on forcing the world to obey your longing. You are being asked to return to a steadier place inside yourself, a place that can feel sadness without becoming destroyed by it. Disappointment hurts because it breaks expectation. And expectation can feel like reality when you have lived with it long enough. You may have carried a whole future inside your mind. You may have seen the conversations, the healing, the reunion, the success, the recognition, the moment when everything would finally make sense. Then life moved differently. And when life moved differently, it did not only take an outcome, it took the imaginary world you had been living in. That is why disappointment can feel like grief. You are mourning something that did not happen, but still felt real inside you. The mind suffers deeply when reality does not match the story it created. It says, "This should have gone another way." It says, "They should have chosen me." It says, "This opportunity should have worked." It says, "After everything I gave, I should have received more." But peace begins when you stop treating every broken expectation as an enemy. Sometimes the expectation breaks because it was built from fear, not wisdom. Sometimes it breaks because it was too small for the life trying to reach you. Sometimes it breaks because what you wanted would have kept you tied to the same suffering in a more attractive form. There are things that look like answers but are actually delays in disguise. A person returning may look like peace, but what if their return only restarts the cycle you were being freed from? A dream working out may look like success, but what if that dream requires you to keep betraying your health, your values, or your inner calm? A door opening may look like victory, but what if behind that door is a life where you would have to shrink again, silence yourself again, prove yourself again, and call survival a blessing? Life may disappoint the surface desire to protect the deeper self. This is why peace sometimes arrives dressed as disappointment, because if it arrived dressed as peace, you might not recognize it, you might reject it. You might say, "No, this cannot be peace because it does not look like what I wanted." You might run back to the familiar pain because the familiar pain wears the face of comfort. So peace comes first as interruption. It comes as the unanswered message that stops you from continuing the chase. It comes as the failed plan that forces you to rethink the direction. It comes as the silence that makes you hear yourself. It comes as the closed door that ends the cycle you did not have the strength to end alone. At first, disappointment feels like emptiness. The thing you expected is not there. The person is not there. The old hope is not there. The mind looks around and sees absence. But absence is not always emptiness. Sometimes absence is space. Space where anxiety used to live. Space where confusion used to sit. Space where your attention was always being pulled away from your own life. Space where the old story no longer fills every corner of your mind. This space may feel uncomfortable because you are not used to it. But if you do not rush to fill it, it can become the place where peace begins to enter. Many people fear the space after disappointment, so they immediately search for another attachment, another person, another plan, another distraction, another problem to solve. They do not want to sit with the silence because silence exposes what the chase kept hidden. But Buddhist wisdom teaches that silence is not punishment. Silence can be medicine. It can show you the restlessness you have been carrying. It can show you how much of your life has been organized around becoming enough for something outside of you. It can show you how tired you are. And once you see your tiredness clearly, You may finally stop calling exhaustion devotion. Disappointment slows you down. This is why the ego hates it. The ego wants movement, control, proof, and results. It wants to say, look, I got what I wanted. Look, I was chosen. Look, I was right. Look, I did not lose. Disappointment gives the ego nothing to display. It humbles the self-image. It strips away the fantasy that you can control every outcome if you try hard enough. And this humility can feel painful, but it can also become freeing. Because when the ego stops performing, the soul can begin telling the truth. The truth may be simple. I wanted this because I was afraid. I chased this because I did not trust life. I needed this person to choose me because I had not yet chosen myself. I wanted that door to open because I believed there was no other path. I called it love, but much of it was panic. These truths may sting, but they are not here to shame you. They are here to clear the fog. Peace cannot live comfortably inside self-deception. It needs honesty. Sometimes disappointment brings that honesty by removing the illusion you kept protecting. There is a disappointment that comes when someone does not become who you hoped they would be. This pain is sharp because hope can be deeply persuasive. You saw their potential. You saw the softer version. You saw the good moments. You saw what could have happened if they had healed, if they had chosen differently, if they had met you with more care, if they had become consistent. But potential is not a place to live. You cannot build peace inside someone's possibility. You cannot rest your heart on who a person might become while their actions keep showing you who they are currently willing to be. When that hope breaks, it feels like loss. But it may also be the beginning of peace, because now you are no longer trapped in waiting for them to grow, waiting for them to see, waiting for them to change, waiting for them to become the person your heart kept meeting in small glimpses. Disappointment removes the fantasy of future rescue. It says, stop living for the version that might arrive one day, return to what is true now. And while that truth can hurt, it also ends the exhaustion of loving an image more than reality. There is also a disappointment that comes when life delays what you wanted. Delay can feel like rejection because the mind wants certainty now. It wants the answer now. It wants the harvest now. It wants proof now. But not every delay is denial. Sometimes delay protects you from receiving something before you are ready to hold it wisely. Sometimes delay gives your character time to mature. Sometimes delay exposes whether you truly want something or only want the feeling you think it will give you. Sometimes delay teaches patience, not as passive waiting, but as deep trust without desperate control. Buddhist wisdom does not tell you to become lazy about your life. It teaches right effort. You still act. You still show up. You still speak honestly. You still plant seeds. You still take responsibility. But you do not strangle the seed because you are afraid it will not grow. You do not tear open the flower because you are impatient for it to bloom. You do not turn every delay into evidence that life has abandoned you. Peace grows when effort is sincere but not desperate. When the hands work, but the heart stops demanding that every result arrive on its personal schedule. Some disappointments reveal that what you wanted was not truly aligned with your deeper peace. You may have wanted the attention, but not the instability that came with it. You may have wanted the relationship, but not the self-abandonment it required. You may have wanted the achievement, but not the constant pressure to prove yourself. You may have wanted the life that looked impressive, but not the emptiness of living for appearance. Disappointment cuts through the surface shine and asks, would this have truly made your soul calm, or did it only satisfy the part of you that wanted validation? This question can change a life, because many desires are borrowed from society, family, old wounds, fear, comparison, loneliness, or ego. You may think you want something because everyone says it is desirable. You may think you need someone because being chosen feels like proof. You may think success means one specific path because your mind has been trained to worship approval. But when that thing fails to arrive, you are given a chance to ask, was this truly mine, or was I chasing peace in a costume? Peace often begins when false desires fall away. At first, this feels like failure because the identity built around those desires is shaken. You may feel lost without the chase, but being lost can be more honest than being committed to the wrong direction. Sometimes the path must become unclear before a truer path can appear. Sometimes the dream must disappoint you before you admit it no longer belongs to your soul. Sometimes the person must fail to meet you before you accept that your heart has been asking for something deeper than their capacity. Disappointment also teaches you to stop confusing emotional relief with peace. Relief is what you feel when anxiety temporarily stops. They reply, and you feel relief. The plan works for one day, and you feel relief. The conflict pauses, and you feel relief. But relief is not the same as peace. Relief depends on the problem calming down. Peace comes from no longer being ruled by the problem. Relief says, the storm has stopped for now. Peace says, even if weather changes, I know where I stand. This matters because many people chase relief and call it happiness. They return to what hurts because the reunion gives relief. They accept small signs because the signs give relief. They keep hoping because hope gives relief. But if the same thing that gives relief also keeps creating distress, it is not peace. It is a cycle. Disappointment may break that cycle by refusing to give you another dose of temporary comfort. It may feel cruel at first, but it may be saving you from becoming addicted to small moments of ease inside a larger pattern of suffering. There is a mercy in not getting what would have kept you asleep, but this mercy is not easy to recognize. When the heart is attached, it does not thank life for protection. It grieves the denial. It says, why not me? Why not now? Why not this person? Why not this door? But later, when clarity has softened the wound, you may see the hidden protection. You may see that what disappointed you also prevented deeper confusion. You may see that the silence you hated gave you back your self-respect. You may see that the closed path prevented a greater loss of time, energy, and spirit. Think of the times when not getting something later became a blessing. At the time, the heart was hurt. But later, the mind understood. You were not rejected, you were redirected. You were not forgotten, you were being taught. You were not punished, you were being removed from a future that would not have honored your growth. This does not mean every disappointment will make sense immediately. Some may take months, some may take years, some may only make sense when you become someone wiser than the person who first suffered it. But the fact that you cannot see the meaning now does not mean there is no meaning unfolding. Buddhist wisdom invites you to live with a wider view. The small self sees only this moment's pain. The wiser self allows time to reveal what pain is teaching. The small self says, I did not get what I wanted, so life is against me. The wiser self says, I am hurting, but I do not know the whole story yet. That one sentence can save you from creating extra suffering. I do not know the whole story yet. It gives space. It keeps the mind from turning disappointment into despair. It allows grief without closing the door on trust. Disappointment can also remove arrogance from the heart. Not the loud kind of arrogance, but the quiet belief that you always know what should happen. We all carry this sometimes. We believe our plan is best. We believe our desire is correct. We believe our timing is perfect. We believe our view is complete. Then life interrupts us, and suddenly we see how little we control. This humbling can be painful, but it can also make the heart more open. When you stop insisting that life must follow only your design, you become available to guidance beyond your current understanding. This is not about giving up your dreams. It is about loosening the grip. There is a difference between walking towards something with faith and clinging to it with fear. Faith walks with effort and openness. Fear grips, demands, panics, and collapses when the result changes. Faith says, I will do my part and remain teachable. Fear says, this must happen exactly this way, or I cannot be okay. Disappointment exposes whether your desire was being held by faith or by fear. If fear was holding it, the disappointment may become the beginning of inner freedom. Sometimes peace arrives dressed as disappointment, because disappointment ends the exhausting performance of trying to make something work that was not working. You may have spent so much energy keeping the connection alive, keeping the image alive, keeping the dream alive, keeping other people comfortable, keeping your own doubts quiet. When it finally falls apart, you may cry, but you may also feel a hidden relief. The performance is over. You no longer have to pretend. You no longer have to keep convincing yourself. You no longer have to smile around something that was quietly breaking your spirit. This relief can feel confusing. You may think, if I am relieved, does that mean I did not care? No. It may mean you cared so much that you exhausted yourself. It may mean your body is finally telling the truth. It may mean the tension you normalized is beginning to leave. It may mean your soul knew before your mind did that the thing you wanted was not the thing that could give you rest. Grief and relief can exist together. One part of you mourns what ended. Another part recognizes that the struggle has stopped. The path to peace after disappointment is not to force yourself to be happy. Forced happiness is another mask. The path begins with honest feeling. I am hurt. I am disappointed. I wanted this. I do not understand yet. I feel empty. These statements are not weakness. They are truth, and truth is the ground where peace can grow. You cannot heal from the disappointment you keep pretending did not affect you. You cannot transform pain that you refuse to name. The heart must be allowed to speak before it can soften. But after the heart speaks, the mind must not turn the feeling into a permanent identity. You can say, I am disappointed, without saying, my life is disappointing. You can say, this door closed, without saying, no door will ever open. You can say, this person did not choose me, without saying, I am not worthy of being chosen. The way you interpret disappointment matters. The first pain may be unavoidable. The second pain often comes from the meaning you attach to it. This is where practice becomes important. When disappointment rises, return to the breath. Not as a simple trick, but as a way of coming back from the story. Breathe and feel the body. Breathe and notice the thoughts. Breathe and say, this is disappointment. Not, this is the end. Not, this is proof I am unloved. Not, this is proof nothing works for me. Just, this is disappointment moving through me. When you name it clearly, it becomes an experience, not a prison. Then ask gently, what space is this disappointment creating? Maybe it is creating space for rest, maybe space for honesty, maybe space for a better direction, maybe space for self-respect, maybe space for deeper spiritual practice, maybe space for you to stop pouring energy into what could not return it. Maybe space for a version of you that does not need to be chosen by the wrong thing in order to feel whole. The answer may not come immediately, but the question itself opens the heart. Disappointment can become a teacher of discernment. It sharpens your ability to see what is truly nourishing and what only excites the wounded self. Before disappointment, you may chase anything that promises relief. After disappointment, if you allow the lesson to work, you become more careful, not closed, but conscious. You begin to ask, does this bring peace or only intensity? Does this honor my spirit or only feed my ego? Does this help me become whole or does it make me dependent? Is this love or am I trying to escape myself? These questions protect your future. Peace is not always the soft thing people think it is. Sometimes peace has the courage to disappoint your attachment. Sometimes peace takes away what your fear kept begging for. Sometimes peace refuses to open the door that would lead you back into the old cycle. Sometimes peace looks like no answer, no return, no approval, no familiar comfort. But beneath that absence, peace is doing quiet work. It is clearing the space. It is removing the noise. It is bringing your energy back from places where it was scattered. It is teaching you that calm is not found by controlling life, but by meeting life with wisdom. The ego sees disappointment as humiliation. The soul may see it as purification. Something false is being burned away. A fantasy, a dependency, a borrowed dream, a desperate need, an illusion of control. This burning does not feel pleasant, but what remains after it may be more real. You may lose the fantasy of being saved by someone else, but gain the strength of standing within yourself. You may lose a plan that made you feel important, but gain a life that feels honest. You may lose a connection that kept you excited, but gain nervous system peace. You may lose the thing you thought you needed, but gain freedom from needing it. And when peace finally begins to appear, it may not arrive dramatically. It may come as a morning when you do not feel the same heaviness. It may come as a moment when you no longer want to check. It may come as a quiet meal, a deep breath, a walk where the world looks gentle again. It may come as the ability to remember without collapsing. It may come as the strength to say, I wanted it, but I accept that it was not mine to keep. This kind of peace is not loud, but it is powerful. It has survived disappointment and become wiser. You may still feel sadness. Peace does not always remove sadness immediately. Sometimes peace sits beside sadness and says, you can be here, but you cannot rule everything. Peace allows grief to breathe without letting grief drive the whole life. Peace allows memory without worshipping the past. Peace allows love without demanding possession. Peace allows uncertainty without panic. This is mature peace, not the peace of getting everything you wanted, but the peace of no longer being destroyed when life says no. There is a sacred strength in accepting a no without turning it into self-hatred. Life may say no to a person, a path, a timing, a dream, a return. But that no does not mean no to your worth. It may mean no to a smaller life, no to repeated suffering, no to illusion, no to forcing, no to self-abandonment, no to a version of happiness that would have kept you spiritually asleep. And hidden inside that no may be a deeper yes. Yes to clarity. Yes to healing. Yes to self-respect. Yes to freedom. Yes to a peace you would not have chosen if disappointment had not opened your eyes. This is why some disappointments must be blessed later, even if they are cried over first. Do not rush the blessing. Let the heart be human. Let the pain move honestly. But stay open to the possibility that this disappointment is not the whole story. Stay open to the possibility that life is rearranging what your fear wanted to keep fixed. Stay open to the possibility that peace has entered the room quietly, wearing clothes your ego does not like. Because sometimes the thing that hurts your expectation heals your direction. Sometimes the answer you did not receive saves you from a longer confusion. Sometimes the person who did not stay gives your soul room to return. Sometimes the plan that failed frees you from performing a life that was never truly yours. Sometimes the delay teaches you to trust yourself before you are trusted with more. Sometimes the disappointment becomes the doorway through which real calm finally walks in. So when disappointment comes, do not immediately call it punishment. Sit with it, listen to it, ask what it is removing, ask what it is revealing, ask what part of you is being asked to grow beyond control. Ask where you had placed your peace outside yourself. Ask what life may be protecting you from, even if your heart cannot understand yet. And while you ask, breathe. Let the disappointment be painful without making it permanent. Let the sadness be real without turning it into your identity. Let the closed door be closed without deciding that life has ended. Peace may not look like peace in the beginning. Sometimes it looks like the loss of what you thought you needed. Sometimes it sounds like silence. Sometimes it feels like emptiness. Sometimes it arrives as the one outcome you feared. But give it time. Give wisdom room. Give your heart permission to see beyond the first wound. One day, you may look back and realize that disappointment did not come to take your peace away. It came because your peace was trapped inside a desire that could not carry it. It came to break the false container. It came to return you to the quiet truth beneath all wanting. Some endings are compassion in disguise because peace does not always arrive as comfort. Sometimes it arrives as disappointment, clearing away what could not hold your soul gently. And when the disguise finally falls, you may see that what you once called loss was life making space for the calm you had been asking for all along. Carrying this from the last lesson, where peace sometimes arrived dressed as disappointment, we now move into the place where the ego feels most exposed. Disappointment hurts, but the meaning the ego gives it can hurt even more. Life may be moving you away from what cannot hold your peace, yet the ego calls it rejection because it only sees the door that did not open. It cannot yet see the road trying to appear. There are moments when life does not say yes to what you wanted, and something inside you tightens. The person does not choose you. The message does not come. The opportunity disappears. The plan fails. The answer becomes silence. Before your wisdom can breathe, the ego begins speaking. It says you were rejected. It says you were not enough. It says you lost because someone else was better. Suddenly, the pain is no longer only about what happened. It becomes about who you think you are because it happened. This is how suffering deepens. Life may simply be redirecting you, but the ego turns redirection into a wound against your identity. It cannot look at a closed door and say, maybe this path is not mine. It says, something must be wrong with me. It cannot look at someone leaving and say, maybe our roads no longer meet in truth. It says, I was not worth staying for. The ego personalizes everything because it is always trying to protect control. Buddhist wisdom asks you to pause before believing the ego's first interpretation. The first story the mind tells is not always the truest story. Sometimes it is only the most wounded story. The ego speaks quickly because it is afraid. Wisdom speaks slowly because it does not need to defend pride. Wisdom does not rush to call every closed door humiliation. Wisdom asks, what else could this mean? That question creates space between the event and the meaning you attach to it. In that space, peace begins to breathe. Rejection is one of the ego's favorite words because it makes pain feel personal. If someone does not choose you, the ego says, they rejected me. If a door does not open, it says, life rejected me. But redirection asks you to see with wider eyes. It asks you to consider that not every no is an insult, not every ending is a judgment, and not every silence is proof of your unworthiness. Sometimes what you call rejection is life refusing to let you keep walking towards something that cannot support your becoming. This does not mean the pain is false. Being unchosen can hurt. Losing what you hoped for can hurt. Buddhist wisdom does not ask you to pretend disappointment is easy. It asks you not to let the ego turn pain into identity. You can say, "This hurt me," without saying, "This defines me." You can say, "That door closed," without saying, "Life does not want me." There is a difference between feeling a wound and becoming the wound. The ego struggles with redirection because redirection requires trust. Trust means admitting that you do not yet see the whole path. The ego hates not knowing. It wants a clear reason, a visible plan, and a guarantee that something better will come. But life does not always explain itself in the moment. Sometimes it guides by removal. Sometimes it teaches through delay. Sometimes it protects through silence. Sometimes it answers by closing what you would have kept forcing open. This is why redirection can feel like rejection at first. Both may look the same in the beginning. A door closes, a person leaves, a plan fails, something you wanted does not arrive. But the inner meaning may be different. Rejection says, "You are not enough." Redirection says, "This is not the way." Rejection attacks your worth. Redirection protects your path. Rejection makes you smaller. Redirection asks you to grow beyond the place that could no longer carry you. The ego cares less about the path and more about being chosen. It wants proof, it wants validation, it wants the satisfaction of saying, "I was wanted." So when life redirects you, the ego grieves the loss of proof. It wanted that person to stay so it could feel important. It wanted that door to open so it could feel successful. It wanted the apology so it could feel right. When those things do not happen, the ego feels stripped. But perhaps what is being stripped away is not your worth. Perhaps it is the false place where you were trying to find worth. When the ego calls something rejection, it often means an expectation has been wounded. You expected someone to understand you. You expected effort to be rewarded in one specific way. You expected love to stay because you gave sincerely. You expected the future to follow the picture in your mind. Then reality moved differently, and the ego felt embarrassed. It did not only lose the thing, it lost the illusion that it could control the outcome. That loss of control is what burns. This is why the ego turns redirection into insult. If life moves differently than your plan, the ego feels disrespected. It says, "How could this happen after all I gave?" But sincere effort does not always return in the form you expected. Sometimes the return is wisdom. Sometimes it is strength. Sometimes it is clarity. Sometimes it is the painful knowledge that you must stop placing your peace where it keeps being disturbed. Redirection often feels unfair because it does not match the sacrifice you made. You may think, "If I gave so much, why did I not receive what I wanted?" But not every investment is meant to return as possession. Sometimes the return is learning not to abandon yourself again. Sometimes the return is realizing your worth is not tied to being chosen. Sometimes the return is learning to validate your own pain without needing the one who caused it to agree. Life may not give back the same thing you gave, but it can return wisdom. This is why some of the greatest redirections begin as ego wounds. You are not chosen and it hurts. Later, you realize being chosen there would have kept you small. A person leaves and it hurts. Later, you realize their leaving returned you to yourself. A plan collapses and it hurts. Later, you realize the collapse forced you to build with more honesty. At first, the ego says, "I was rejected." Later, the soul says, "I was guided." The difficulty is surviving the space between those two understandings, the space where it still hurts, the space where nothing makes sense yet, the space where your ego is loud and your wisdom is still quiet. This is the sacred middle. You may not be ready to call it redirection yet. That is okay, but you can still refuse to turn the pain into self-hatred. You can say, "I do not understand this yet, but I will not use it as proof that I am worthless." That decision is powerful. It interrupts the ego's habit of making every loss about your value. It teaches the mind that pain does not need to become shame. You can hurt without attacking yourself. You can be disappointed without deciding you are a failure. You can feel rejected without letting rejection become your name. This is emotional maturity. It is not the absence of pain. It is the ability to hold pain without letting the ego write a cruel story over your life. When life redirects you, the first sign is often resistance. You do not want the new direction. You want the old path, but improved. The same person, but kinder. The same dream, but easier. The same door, but open. The ego rarely asks for a new path. It asks for control over the old one. But life may know the old path cannot be repaired in the way your attachment wants. So instead of fixing the old, life removes you from it. This removal can feel like rejection because the ego does not understand protection when it comes without permission. Many blessings begin as things you would not have chosen. You would not have chosen the silence. You would not have chosen the loss. But later, you may see that if life had waited for your permission, you would have stayed too long. You would have negotiated with pain. You would have dressed fear as loyalty. You would have kept defending what was quietly draining you. Redirection does not always take you immediately to something better outside. Sometimes it first takes you inward, back to your breath, back to your body, back to your neglected needs, back to your spiritual practice, back to the parts of yourself you left behind while chasing what would not stay. The outer life may still look uncertain, but the inner return has begun. This is sacred because if you do not return to yourself, you may carry the same wound into the next path. The ego wants quick replacement. It wants to prove it is still wanted. It wants another door to open immediately so it can stop feeling rejected. But wisdom does not rush to replace what left. Wisdom asks what the loss revealed. It asks what pattern must end before the next chapter begins. It asks what part of you still looks for peace in unstable places. Without this pause, you may run from rejection into repetition. There is a difference between being redirected and being distracted. Distraction helps you avoid the wound. Redirection helps you understand it. Distraction says, find something quickly so you do not feel this. Redirection says, feel this with awareness so you do not recreate it. The ego prefers distraction because it wants relief. The soul prefers redirection because it wants freedom. When the ego calls it rejection, it often looks for someone to blame. Blame gives the mind a target. It creates a feeling of control. But redirection asks for something deeper than blame. It asks for understanding. It asks you to see your attachment, their limits, the timing, the imbalance, and the truth that was present before the ending arrived. Blame may give temporary heat, but understanding gives lasting clarity. There is hidden kindness in some closed doors, not the kindness that feels warm immediately, but the kindness that prevents longer suffering. You may feel rejected by someone's absence, but perhaps that absence prevents years of emotional hunger. You may feel rejected by an opportunity, but perhaps that opportunity would have taken your energy without nourishing your purpose. Not all acceptance is a blessing. Sometimes being accepted by the wrong thing is more dangerous than being redirected away from it. Awareness turns rejection into inquiry. Instead of asking only, why was I not chosen? You ask, what was I choosing that did not choose me back? Instead of asking, what is wrong with me? You ask, what is life teaching me about where I place my worth? These questions do not remove pain instantly, but they move you from self-attack to self-understanding. Sometimes the closed door is saying, not here. The silence is saying, stop waiting outside yourself. The rejection is saying, do not measure your soul by this person's vision. The delay is saying, Become ready in ways you do not yet understand. Redirection often begins with discomfort, repeated resistance, and the quiet feeling that you are forcing something that should not require the death of your spirit. Learning to recognize redirection requires humility. You must be willing to admit, I may not know what is best from where I stand right now. The ego thinks humility means defeat, but humility is openness to a larger truth. It is the ability to say, I wanted this deeply, but perhaps my wanting was not the whole truth. When you can say that, you stop worshipping desire as if it is always guidance. The ego says, I was rejected. Wisdom says, I am being taught. The ego says, this no proves I am lacking. Wisdom says, this no may be protecting my yes. The ego says, I must get back what I lost to feel whole. Wisdom says, I must return to the wholeness that was never truly lost. The ego says, life embarrassed me. Wisdom says, life humbled me so I could see more clearly. The words you use matter. If you keep saying, I was rejected, your body will carry that as truth. It will shrink, defend, and fear trying again. But if you say, I was redirected, something softens. Not because the pain disappears, but because the meaning expands. Redirection gives pain a path. It tells the heart, this is not the end of you, this is movement. Some endings are compassion in disguise because they wound the ego while saving the soul. The ego may feel rejected because it lost the proof it wanted, but the soul may be redirected toward peace, truth, dignity, and freedom. So let the ego feel, but do not let it name the experience too soon. Do not let pain become the final meaning. What the ego calls rejection may be life refusing to let you abandon yourself again. What the ego calls failure may be life correcting your direction. What the ego calls loss may be life making space for peace. One day, you may realize you were not being pushed out of life. You were guided out of illusion and toward the path your soul was ready to walk. Some endings do not arrive to destroy you. They arrive to wake you up. They close the door your attachment kept defending. They remove what your fear kept calling home. They take away the version of life where you had to shrink, beg, chase, explain, wait, and lose yourself just to feel chosen. At first, it may look like rejection. It may feel like punishment. It may sound like silence. But with time, wisdom begins to speak. You start to see that the closed door was protecting you. The loss was revealing you. The disappointment was making space for peace. The person who left became a teacher. The pain of clinging showed you where freedom was needed. And the ending that once felt like abandonment slowly became the doorway back to yourself. Buddhist wisdom teaches that nothing is truly ours to hold forever. People change, seasons pass, dreams shift, attachments loosen. But what remains is the awareness you gain, the peace you protect, and the compassion you learn to give yourself. Not every goodbye needs to break you. Some goodbyes return your breath. Some goodbyes restore your dignity. Some goodbyes save you from a life your soul had already outgrown. So if something has ended in your life, do not rush to call it loss. Sit with it. Listen to it. Let it teach you. One day you may realize that what left was not taking your life away. It was clearing the path for you to finally live it with peace. If this message touched a place in you, write in the comments, I release what was not meant to stay. Let that be your quiet promise to stop worshipping closed doors and start walking toward your own peace. And if you found value in this teaching, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you can keep receiving wisdom that helps your heart let go, heal, and return to itself.